Hey everyone, welcome back. Chapters 1181 through 1200 of the previous episode. Qinmu explores the Grand Extremes mine, discovering that the ancient god egg within holds a great Dao rune that can counter celestial venerable Ling's unchanging substance divine art. After a series of perilous battles and interactions with the celestial venerables, Qinmu successfully rescues his allies and learns the truth about the ancient god's origins. He uses the power of the Grand Primordium Origin Stone and his deep comprehension of the Tao to stabilize his spirit embryo divine treasure, effectively reconstructing his own existence and surpassing the limitations of the current cultivation system. Finally, Qinmu reconnects with Celestial Venerable Yu and his allies, setting the stage for a new era as he prepares to lead the human race toward a future beyond the control of the Celestial Venerables. If you're able to, please support me on PayPal to help me stay active. Thank you. Now let's get back to the story of Tales of Herding Gods audio series. Chapter 1201. Fellow Taoist, wait for me. On this day, a huge change happened in the primordial realm. Celestial Venerable Ling, Celestial Venerable Yu, Celestial Venerable Hua, and the first Emperor of the High Emperor Heaven, Xiao Weisu, killed Mother Earth and destroyed the primordial tree. The 15th South High Emperor Heaven led his army to attack the North High Emperor Celestial Heavens, eradicating this tumor of the primordial realm. In this battle, South High Emperor unified the primordial realm, and there were countless stories that couldn't be told. On the day Mother Earth was beheaded, many inconceivable phenomena occurred. The collapse of the primordial tree was one thing, but there was also the chaos of space and the descent of the gods. Some said that the legendary Celestial Venerable Hao of the extraterritorial Celestial Heavens had led the strong practitioners of the Celestial Heavens to descend and assist Celestial Venerable Yu, Celestial Venerable Hua, and the rest in killing Mother Earth. There were also people who said that Celestial Venerable Yu lost control of her divine art, and Celestial Venerable Yu was severely injured by Mother Earth. She became crippled and her face was ruined. There were also people who said that Xiao Weisu was recognized by Celestial Venerable Yu and Celestial Venerable Ling, and handed the chopped primordial tree to him. Another person said that Celestial Venerable Ling, Celestial Venerable Hua, made the decision to let Xiao Weisu control the primordial realm. However, since then, very few people saw Celestial Venerable Yu. Celestial Venerable Ling also went into seclusion again, showing signs of retreating. What happened that day had already become history, and no one knew. On that day, Celestial Venerable Yu escaped back to her palace. If she wanted to leave, no one in the world could stop her. However, in order to save Celestial Venerable Ling, she did what she did in the dream. She gave up her legs and face in exchange for Celestial Venerable Ling's chance to escape. She practically crawled back into her palace and immediately laid down all kinds of spatial seals, preventing Celestial Venerable Hao and the rest from finding her. "Yenner, bring a screen over. Don't let anyone see me," she said with a trembling voice. The screen covered her, and Yenner very considerately lit the lantern for her. Celestial Venerable Yu trembled as she picked up the mirror. Looking at the ugly face in the mirror, she threw the mirror away. At this moment, a figure walked over silently, but Yenner and the other palace maids didn't seem to see him. Qinmu walked towards the screen. Celestial Venerable Yu covered her face and said in a hoarse voice, "Don't come over. I don't want you to see me like this." Qinmu pushed open the screen, and Celestial Venerable Yu screamed. No matter which direction Qinmu walked towards, the screen would always block his path. "You." Qinmu stood in front of the screen and said softly, "I'm going back." Celestial Venerable Yu remained silent. Qinmu continued to say, "I can't save you now. I can't solve Xiao Weisu's innate qi, nor can I solve Celestial Venerable Hua's divine art. However, in the future, when your peach tree grows throughout the thousands of worlds, when I bring this painting back, you will return to your original appearance. At that time, you will still be Celestial Venerable Yu." He bowed and left. "Dao friend, wait for me." There was silence behind the screen. After a long time, the woman behind the screen bowed slightly in the shadow. Time flew. The end of High Emperor era was already set in stone. Mother Earth died and Celestial Venerable Yu was severely injured, leaving Celestial Venerable Ling alone. However, Celestial Venerable Ling had remarkable abilities and unimaginable abilities, especially in the last years of the High Emperor era. Once her divine arts were executed, no one could match her. However, it was easy to dodge a spear in the open, but hard to defend against an arrow in the dark. Celestial Venerable Ling was ambushed by Celestial Emperor and died in the Celestial River. A prosperous dynasty that had lasted for 300,000 years became extinct. That year, a young girl from the White Dragon clan carried a long sword on her back and led countless people in ragged clothes to avoid the pursuit of the gods and devils of the extraterritorial celestial heavens. She endured countless hardships and finally came to the East Sea. She led the survivors of High Emperor to the sea. After an unknown period of time, they came across a floating island on the surface of the sea. Peach blossoms bloomed on the island, and it was extremely beautiful. The owner of that place received them. The owner had a weird temper and didn't see any guests, only hiding behind the screen. "I can send you guys to hide in a hidden heaven," the owner of the Peach Garden said to the White Dragon girl. "When the High Emperor calamity is over, you can return to this land." The White Dragon clan thanked him. She frequently waved her sword light, and the owner of the Peach Garden would sit in a wheelchair and be pushed out by a girl. With a veil covering her face, she would faintly watch her dance with her sword. The sword danced like a fish and dragon, illuminating the East Sea. The White Dragon clan discovered many strange things on the floating island. They walked randomly from the peach forest on the island. Sometimes they walked to other heavens, sometimes to the primordial realm, and sometimes even to Yudu and Xuandu. She also discovered that the owner of the Peach Garden had a strange temper. She always asked the girl called Yenner where the peach forests grew. The White Dragon clan had heard that this strange peach forest was planted by the owner of the Peach Garden back then. It had developed to its current scale after thousands of years. She even heard from Yenner that the owner of the Peach Garden was waiting for a person. That person would only appear when the Peach Garden was full of worlds. In the end, the White Dragon clan led their clansmen through the peach forest and entered a hidden heaven. They settled down and reproduced. The White Dragon clan also frequently came out to teach the people of the primordial realm paths, skills, and divine arts, promoting the philosophy of the High Emperor era. She was honored as High Emperor Sword God. She would still pass by the peach forest from time to time. The peach forest had already grown into many heavens, but the owner of the Peach Garden still hadn't found the person she was waiting for. The White Dragon clan met a youth called Qinyi and Wentiange, who knew how to chop firewood, Diyue, who had a bad temper, and Yen Yunxi, who was an elegant woman dressed as a man. She was still walking in the world. The owner of the Peach Garden was waiting for someone, and she was also waiting for someone. Unknowingly, 20,000 years had passed, and founding Emperor Celestial Heavens had turned into dust. The glory of the past had turned into ruins. The owner of the peach forest still hadn't found that person, and she hadn't found that person either. After another 20,000 years of darkness, the White Dragon clan searched bitterly for clues about that person. On this day, she passed by the source of the surging river, and the fog in the river gradually rose. The young girl carrying the divine sword couldn't help but sigh ruefully. This river had buried too much history. So much so that the surging river water had become the whimpering of time. At this moment, she saw the gods of the celestial heavens rushing over. The gods of the celestial heavens were chasing after a girl carrying a basket. She had saved the girl, but she was already exhausted. She admired this heroine and escorted her forward. However, that girl still fell in surging river in the end. In the basket was a tiny baby crying loudly. On his chest was a Qin jade pendant. When night fell, the White Dragon clan sent the baby to a small village beside surging river. "Listen." An old granny's voice came from the village. "There's a child crying outside." In the surging river that was 46 years later, waves surged, and huge waves crashed into the sky, splitting the shore. The fog rose again and rays of light flashed past. Qin Mu brought Wei Suifeng, King Dragon Count, Feng Chuyun, Lin Xiao, the feathered forest guards, and tens of thousands of strong practitioners to appear on the river surface. Violent winds blew, and the waves were very high, blowing away the fog. Divine force burst forth on the river surface, stopping the wind and flattening the waves. The feathered forest guards were in a somber mood. Chapter 1202. The next wave hurts the first wave. Behind Qin Mu, Wei Suifeng and the 50,000 feathered forest guards bowed and said in unison, "Many thanks, benefactor." The river water rumbled and countless ripples were created. On both sides of the surging river, Birds were flying together. Qin Mu turned around and helped Wei Suifeng up. He put his hands on Wei Suifeng's shoulders and laughed. "Big brother, why do you have to do this? Everyone, get up." When King Dragon Count Feng Chuyun and the rest saw this, their expressions changed drastically and they felt uneasy. The Emperor of Endless Clouds, Wei Suifeng, was a peak emperor's throne. With tens of thousands of feathered forest guards, this power was enough to sweep across the primordial realm. Of course, other than the divine weapon Celestial Venerable You of the primordial realm. At this point, Eternal Peace finally had the power to challenge the world. Even if it was the weakest power, it was still power. King Dragon Count Sister Chuyun Lin Xiao, swear to Little Earth Count. Qin Mu swept his gaze over. Little Earth Count? These people were uneasy and didn't know who this Little Earth Count was. However, the situation was stronger than them, so they could only follow Qin Mu's words and make an oath to Little Earth Count. However, what puzzled them was that they had sworn an oath to Little Earth Count, yet they didn't receive any response from that Little Earth Count. This made them surprised and delighted, thinking that the contract was useless. However, they didn't know that the Little Earth Count wasn't here. He was in the Great Void. As long as they stepped into the Great Void, or if Qin Fengqin came here from the Great Void, the Pact of Little Earth Count would immediately be fulfilled. At that time it would be fine if they didn't rebel, but if they did, there would only be one ending for them. Senior brother, are you guys staying in Eternal Peace or heading to the Great Void? Qin Mu said. If you stay in Eternal Peace, you soldiers can take the chance to absorb the results of Eternal Peace's reform, and make up for the hundreds of thousands of years of deficiencies. If you go to the Great Void, you will be able to fight against the celestial heavens. Wei Suifeng pondered for a moment and said, let's stay in Eternal Peace first. We'll head to the Great Void after a few years. Qin Mu nodded his head gently. Wei Suifeng had his own considerations. The feathered forest guards were still the paths, skills, and divine arts of the Dragon Han era. Not to mention Eternal Peace. Even the current celestial heavens couldn't compare to them. Even though their realms were very high and the lowest was Jade Capital Realm, when compared to the soldiers of the celestial heavens, their abilities were only equivalent to God Execution Stage or even Jade Pool Realm. Compared to the soldiers of Eternal Peace, their abilities were even lower. They were merely equivalent to the heavenly gods of the Jade Pool Realm. If they were to face a monster like the leader of Eternal Peace's reform, they would probably be inferior to even the heavenly gods. The leader of the reform on the true God realm would be on par with them. The times were not stagnant. If they didn't, that would be an era that made people feel incomparably sorrowful and hopeless. However, the talents of the feathered forest guards were extremely high, and every one of them was a genius. As long as they absorbed the results of Eternal Peace's reform, they could surpass the soldiers of the celestial heavens, and even catch up to the gods of Eternal Peace. Qin Mu and Wei Suifeng bowed and said, in the future, I will also head to the Great Void to take a look at the situation there. You guys go and meet Earth Mother first. Earth Mother controls half of the primordial realm today, and she has the power to build a palace and store troops. Eternal Peace doesn't have many troops, so with your support, Earth Mother can finally rule half of the primordial realm. Wei Suifeng led the feathered forest guards, Feng Chuyun, King Dragon Count, and the rest away. From afar, Feng Chuyun saw a verdant primordial tree that covered an extremely wide area. She couldn't help but feel delighted. Celestial Venerable Mu and the rest even said that Mother Earth is already dead. They are probably trying to trick me into betraying Mother Earth. Now that I'm with Mother Earth, I will still be put in an important position, and my phoenix race will also be put in an important position. They got closer to the primordial tree, and from afar, they could see a celestial palace being constructed. That celestial palace was floating between the crowns of the primordial tree. The heavenly workers and formation masters of Eternal Peace Empire were designing formations to build the celestial palace, and the celestial palace was already more than half completed. It wasn't easy to forge a celestial palace. The celestial heavens gathered all the skilled craftsmen in the worlds to forge a celestial palace, and Eternal Peace had never had such experience. However, to forge a celestial palace with the power of a country, this kind of potential was still astonishing. Wei Suifeng led them to the vicinity of the primordial tree, and the soldiers of Eternal Peace immediately came to investigate. After asking around, They hurried to report to the celestial palace. Feng Chuyun examined the primordial tree and was suspicious. She saw a huge capital city under the primordial tree, and on the primordial tree was a huge capital city. People came and went, and it was extremely bustling. As for the celestial palaces, even though they were luxurious and magnificent, they weren't as lively as these two capital cities. Mother Earth has always looked down on humans and treated them badly. Why is she treating them so well now? Not long later, the gods of eternal peace invited them into the celestial palace. Wei Suifeng led a group of generals, King Dragon Count, Feng Chuyun, and the rest to the numinous sky hall. When they arrived in front of the numinous sky hall, everyone tidied up their clothes and walked into the hall with solemn expressions. They followed the god official and greeted Earth Mother. Feng Chuyun secretly raised her head and saw Earth Mother. She was stunned and cried out, "Yenner!" Gong Sun Yen saw her and couldn't help being surprised and delighted. She didn't care about etiquette and hurriedly got up from her seat with a smile. "Sister Chuyun," Feng Chuyun hurriedly said. "How did you get to that seat? Come down quickly." "You." She suddenly came to a realization and exclaimed, "You are Earth Mother?" Her mind was blown. The little sister who always followed her around back then had actually become the Earth Mother that dominated half of the primordial realm. She still remembered Gong Sun Yen at that time. She was always so delicate that people couldn't help feeling pity for her. She was born from the fruit of Mother Earth, but Mother Earth didn't like her child and sent her out to guard the door. However, Gong Sun Yen didn't complain at all. She even planted a fruit garden outside and busied herself with watering the plants and catching insects every day. Who would have thought that that girl would actually have her current status? Gong Sun Yen walked down and said in delight, "My branch hasn't fallen off yet. Sister Chuyun is finally here." Feng Chuyun was muddle-headed. She had only been trapped on the ghost ship for 10 to 20 years, but she didn't expect the changes to be so huge. Where's Mother Earth? Where is Mother Earth? She was at a loss. On the other side, Qin Mu came to the Dao sect, and Dao Master Lin Xian hurriedly invited him in. Qin Mu looked at the peach forest beside the Dao sect, and Dao Master Lin Xian smiled. "Cult Master Qin wants to meet the owner of the peach garden?" Qin Mu said, "She's an old friend of mine and I do want to see her very much. However, I still don't have the ability to get rid of her illness, so I can only wait for a while." Dao Master Lin Xian's gaze flickered and he said, "We haven't seen each other for over 10 years. May I ask how strong Cult Master is now? I'm always worried that you will slack off." Qin Mu looked at him disdainfully and said slowly, "No matter which step it is, I'm still stronger than you." Dao Master Lin Xian said humbly, Yes. Cult Master Qin is the overlord body after all, so he's always slightly stronger than others. The little Taoists have been cultivating diligently for the past few years, but as their cultivation becomes more profound, their competitive hearts also become much fainter, and they no longer like to fight and kill. Especially after I comprehended Dao Sword's great algebra Dao domain. I rarely use my sword. After all, there are fewer people that are worth my effort. Qin Mu was full of smiles. "Looks like Dao Ancestor has taught you quite a lot of good stuff." Lin Xian poured tea for him, and he was also full of smiles. "Even though Dao Ancestor gave me pointers, I still have to rely on myself for my cultivation, and I don't owe him anything. When I taught him microscopic algebra, he was so happy that he was like a child saying that his Dao had succeeded. I don't know where he went now."
Qin Mu smiled.
"However, microscopic algebra was imparted to you by me. You comprehended it and threw it to me, but I perfected it." Dao Master Lin Xian corrected him with a smile and reminded him, "You are a lazy person. You can't perfect microscopic algebra, but I'm a calm person. Only I can do what you can't." Qin Mu's gaze flickered and he drank his tea. However, Su Shanghua also comprehended microscopic algebra. "How is he compared to you?" Dao Master Lin Xian's expression froze and he said resentfully, "We communicated a few times. He lived far away, so it wasn't easy for him to come here. He was a guest from afar, so I let him win a few times to prevent him from being sad." Qin Mu laughed loudly and said leisurely, "Su Shanghua is also slightly inferior to me, the kind that's erected." Dao Master Lin Xian snorted. Su Shenghua's divine art has already reached the microscopic domain. Just like my sword. I'm in the Great Algebra Tao domain, and he's in the Great Divine Path domain. Immortal Wang Muran is also very remarkable. He combined the techniques of Little Jade Capital into one, and there are 12 celestial palaces. In terms of cultivation, he's the number one among his peers. Overlord body with the surname Qin, you have already become obsolete. He raised his teacup to his lips, but he didn't drink the tea. The waves after the surging river push forward the waves. You, the former waves, have long died on the beach. Chapter 1203, Destroying the Waves. Qin Mu raised his cup of tea and gently blew on the tea leaves. He said with a smile, I've been wandering in the celestial heavens for so many years, but I haven't died yet. Could it be that I can still die from wandering in your small Tao sect? Tao Master Lin Xian drank the tea in one gulp, and Qin Mu also drank the tea in one gulp. Both of them put down their teacups at the same time. The teacups were deeply embedded into the stone table, and the surface of the cup was equal to the stone table. This was a creation divine art. The two of them executed their creation divine arts at the same time to change the structure of the stone table and the teacup, allowing the teacup and the stone table to become one. In the distance, a few Taoists looked into the distance and whispered to each other with different opinions. Tao Master has always been calm and collected, as high as the sky and as far as the clouds. Even though he's young, his cultivation is unfathomable, and he's as indifferent as a wild crane. Ever since Tao Ancestor came here, Tao Master has become even more unfathomable, and his cultivation is like a vast ocean. A young Taoist asked bewilderedly, Why are you angry today? The older Taoist beside him smiled and said, That's because you don't know who he is. This guest is the famous celestial Venerable Mu, a person who wreaks havoc in the world. Back then, Tao Master didn't suffer less in his hands. The young Taoist was puzzled.
Celestial Venerable Mu?
Why would Celestial Venerable hang out with Tao Master? And why would Tao Master get angry? You don't know about this, but the older generation is very dirty-minded. Back then, Celestial Venerable Mu was called Cult Master Qin and was a great devil. Heavenly Devil Cult Master. Tao Master lost to him the first time and his Tao sword was broken by him. The other Taoists talked at once and revealed all of Tao Master Lin Xian's secrets. Other than Immortal Wang of Little Jade Capital, Su Shanghua of West Earth, Shahuali of Middle Earth and Rulai of Mount Meru, there aren't many people in this world that can be compared to Tao Master. Also, that Qi Jui is also very powerful, but he doesn't really interact much recently. However, the one Tao Master wants to fight the most is still this Celestial Venerable Mu. Now that he has delivered himself to our door, we will definitely have a fight. In front of the stone table, Qin Mu stirred his teacup, and it spun out from the stone table again. The surface of the table wasn't damaged at all, and he said indifferently, It's been a long time since I beat you guys up. Looks like you guys think of yourselves as overlords. Oh. Tao Master Lin Xian also stirred his teacup and said indifferently, Does Cult Master know who is the Alpha and Beta Overlord body? His teacup also floated up, leaving no trace on the stone table. Over the years, I used microscopic algebra to reconstruct the sacred runes of the great Tao of the heavens, and I also learned macroscopic algebra from Tao Ancestor. In terms of attainments in algebra, the difference between you and me is like clouds and mud. I'm a cloud and you are mud. Tao Master Lin Xian pulled out his sword and stabbed it into the stone table with a clink. He said with a smile, Founding Emperor also came to the Tao sect and imparted the sword path to me, allowing me to see the ultimate marvel of the Tao realm. Village Chief also came here. He sounded very disappointed in you, but he was full of praise for me. They thought you were already crippled and your path was off. Qin Mu stared at his sword and pulled it out with a wave of his hand. He stabbed his broken sword into the table and sneered. I'm not the one who's crippled, it's Village Chief and Founding Emperor. I'm the one who's right. I've beaten both of them. Tao Master Lin Xian's eyes lit up, but his aura became even more restrained. Even the evil and unorthodox paths say so. After so many years you still haven't changed at all. Qin Mu laughed and said, If I didn't beat you up, you would really think you were the Alpha. Do you think you can seize the fate of my overlord body? Tao Master Lin Xian stood up, and his Taoist robe fluttered in the wind as if he was going to ride the wind. There's no point in saying more. Whether you are an Alpha or a Beta, The truth will be revealed in your hands. Qin Mu stood up and said leisurely, "You guys underestimate me too much. Even if you guys continue the reform of eternal peace, I'm not bad. In terms of cultivation, I'm still the strongest. In terms of sword path, I'm still the strongest. In terms of battle power, I'm still the strongest. In terms of algebra, I'm still the one standing on the peak." Dao Master Lin Xian swept his sleeves and sword lights filled the sky. However, in the next moment the sword lights vanished. In its place were the vast stars of the universe. The planets seemed to appear in the tiny Dao sect, displaying their magnificent beauty. On the other hand, if one looked carefully, any grain of sand, a blade of grass, or a drop of water in those stars would show endless microscopic structures, fully displaying the beauty of the microscopic world. Qin Mu's expression changed slightly, and he muttered in his heart, "It seems like I'm still not the strongest in algebra." Dao Master Lin Xian's macroscopic algebra and microscopic algebra had both reached the level of Dao. His sword skills combined macroscopic together perfectly, and even all kinds of different great Daos were deconstructed by algebra. The changes in algebra resulted in changes in the Dao. This resulted in a change in his sword Dao. In terms of algebra, Qin Mu felt that he was far inferior to him. Other than Dao sect's Dao sword, Lin Xian's sword Dao also had the shadow of Founding Emperor and Village Chief. Founding Emperor and Village Chief were both existences that had cultivated the sword domain, and their attainments in the sword Dao were extremely high. Dao Master Lin Xian's talent in the sword Dao was also extremely high. With the guidance of 2 experts in the sword Dao, his attainments in the sword Dao had also reached an eye-opening stage. He just didn't know if Dao Master Lin Xian had learned the 20th sword form. Su Shanghua came to see him a few times, but Lin Xian was defeated. Doesn't that mean Su Shanghua is stronger? When Qin Mu thought of this, he pulled out the broken sword from the stone table. "However, you are all betas." He pulled out his broken sword, and his sword realm burst forth. Great Algebra Dao domain and Calamity Sword domain collided, and the huge planets surrounding the Dao sect collapsed in his Calamity Sword domain. Dao Master Lin Xian gave a long roar and executed his technique to reverse the situation. However, he saw the collapsed stars starting to shrink before rapidly expanding and burning, transforming into suns formed by heavenly fire. Great sun sovereigns flapped their wings and flew out from the sun, transforming into 3-legged golden crows that pounced at Qin Mu from all directions. They had the power of the innate Dao. Starry substitution and the sun formed a sword formation, and the great sun sovereigns were the core of the formation. This was the sword formation of the great sun divine sword. Lin Xian had originally cultivated Pre-Celestial Supreme Mystery Technique. Pre-Celestial Supreme Mystery Technique was taught by the abandoned disciples of the Celestial Heavens Dao sect, and was a part of the Celestial Heavens Dao Ancestor Supreme Mystery Dao Technique. When Dao Ancestor came to visit, he imparted the complete Supreme Mystery Dao art to him. His cultivation was truly vigorous. In addition to his great Algebra Dao domain, the beauty of his ultimate algebra was intoxicating. This scene looked like he was using the Khanate Great Dao to set up the formation, but it was actually a sword skill. It looked like a sword skill, but it was actually a formation. It looked like a formation, but it was actually algebra. Everything was ultimately algebra. This was the essence of paths, skills, and divine arts. Qin Mu's broken sword quickly recovered, and his sword realm expanded. He used his sword to break the formation and the great sun divine sword. How capable! He praised in his heart. When he broke the formation, he felt the power coming from the sword formation. Lin Xian's cultivation isn't as good as mine, but microscopic algebra makes up for his lack of magic power. His improvement over these years isn't small. Unexpectedly, at the instant the sword formation was broken, the stars changed and the stars shifted. Dao Master Lin Xian's sword light scattered, and the sword light transformed into ancient gods of the stars, forming the heavenly constellation Earthly Fiend formation without any explanation. The stars in the sky suddenly increased in number, and the ancient gods of the stars looked like they were formed by countless suns. They looked simple, fierce, and fierce. Once the formation was unleashed, it froze Qin Mu's sword realm. Chapter 1204 Dao Sect's Khanate Qi. Qin Mu's expression changed slightly, and he immediately changed his move. He transformed into the Raising Calamity Sword and killed the ancient gods of the Big Dipper stars. He forcefully broke through the Earth Chief Stardo ancient gods, preventing them from surrounding him. Right at this moment, more stars appeared in the sky. The heavenly constellation Earthly Fiend Array transformed into the heavenly cycle star gods Great Array, and an inescapable net rushed towards them. Qin Mu's facing calamity sword scattered in all directions, and the star gods were hit. His sword path was extremely powerful. In terms of cultivation, he was definitely the one with the densest cultivation in Eternal Peace's reform. No one could compare to him. Even if Dao Master Lin Xian's sword skills were incomparably exquisite and his algebra was incomparably profound, it would still be hard for him to compete with his magic power. His magic power had far surpassed Lin Xian's. However, at the instant the star gods were destroyed, countless stars gathered together. With a loud rumble, countless stars were pressed together and transformed into calamity stars. Calamity stars were incomparably heavy, and they were one of the heaviest stars in the universe. This kind of abnormal star spun extremely fast, and terrifying beams would frequently burst forth in the universe. They were like sword lights, and wherever they passed, everything was wiped out. Lin Xian's sword light flashed, and over 10 calamity stars swirled around Qin Mu crazily. Shocking sword lights slashed down at Qin Mu. Qin Mu swung his sword to block, and he heard endless explosions. The 10+ stars were actually shattered by him. However, in the next moment, the tip of Dao Master Lin Xian's sword moved, and the shattered stars gathered together to transform into a huge abyss that could swallow anything. With a swoosh, it swallowed Qin Mu. It was like the place where the universe ended. It was like a black hole that swallowed everything. Oh, the abyss of the ruins of End. Can your algebra evolve the great Tao divine art of the ruins of End? Qin Mu's voice came from the abyss, and the power of sword domain completely burst forth. The abyss of the ruins of End that was formed by Dao Master Lin Xian's sword light actually collapsed, and Qin Mu was about to escape. Dao Master Lin Xian raised his sword with his right hand and used his left hand to form a sword technique. He moved forward along the sword and smeared it on the tip of the sword. He said solemnly, "All Daos converge into one congenital qi." Swoosh. He stabbed out with his sword, and Qin Mu had just escaped from the abyss of the ruins of End. The sword light was incomparably fast and arrived in front of Qin Mu in an instant. Qin Mu didn't have the time to swing his sword. He raised his sword with his right hand and carried it behind his back while his left hand gripped the sword technique in the heart of his brows. His voice was deep and low. "Divine treasure, open." The speed of Dao Master Lin Xian's sword was extremely fast, and it stabbed the tip of his left middle finger with a clink. A drop of blood flowed down from the tip of his finger and slid down the sword. At the same time, Qin Mu's divine treasure realm burst forth. 10,000 Dao rumbled and spewed out, and incomparably terrifying power burst forth. Qin Mu's left and right sword skills collided with the tip of Dao Master Lin Xian's sword, and his sword skills smacked forward. Boom! His celestial palaces rumbled, and the ancestral court Xuandu Yudu Yuandu, the 4 extreme heavens, the thousands of worlds in the heavens, and countless great Daos resonated at the same time. As his sword technique surged, the vast power bounced Dao Master Lin Xian and the Dao sword high into the sky. The sword light around Dao Master Lin Xian crumbled, and the qi of the first heaven in the sword also broke off layer by layer. Bang, bang, bang. Explosions rang out, and the Taoist robe on Lin Xian's body exploded continuously. He crashed backward together with his sword and crashed into a cliff. Luckily, Qin Mu had retracted his power in time and didn't severely injure him. However, the power of this strike still caused blood to spurt out from his eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. The Taoist robe on his body was also full of holes, and it didn't cover his body. The cliff cracked from his collision, and Dao Master Lin Xian fell from the cliff, sprawled in the dust. Qin Mu jumped in shock and quickly went forward. He was about to check on his injuries when Dao Master Lin Xian suddenly jumped up. He didn't even want his Dao sword and threw it far away. He flailed his arms and legs as he ran around joyfully. "I injured him." Qin Mu was stunned. Dao Master Lin Xian was wearing a tattered Taoist robe that was leaking air everywhere, and his eyes, ears, mouth, and nose were all covered in blood. He shouted happily, "I made him bleed. I stabbed him with my sword. Ha 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 ha." The insufferably arrogant cult master Qin was injured by my sword, by my Dao sect. The Taoists in Dao sect looked at each other in dismay. They saw their sect master sprinting frantically, running all over the mountains and plains, shouting non-stop as though he was extremely happy. However, sect master's Taoist robe couldn't hide his body, and his white buttocks could be seen from behind. Many female Taoist nuns hurriedly covered their faces and couldn't bear to look at them, so they could only sneak peeks through the gaps between their fingers. Qin Mu's face turned red, and he went to intercept Lin Xian. Dao friend, you stabbed my fingertip, yet I beat you half to death. Logically speaking, I won, but you were so excited as if you had won. Dao master Lin Xian placed his hands on his hips and said righteously, if I hurt you, it would be considered my victory. Su Shanghua is so powerful and immortal Wang Muran is so impressive, but they have never hurt you, only I have. I'm stronger than them. Qin Mu muttered. That's because I'm stronger, what are you happy about? Dao master Lin Xian was indescribably excited. I injured celestial venerable Mu. No one else can do it, only I can. Even Su Shanghua can't, he can't. I'm the alpha, he's a beta. Qin Mu gave a cough and reminded him. You are currently naked. I was born naked, what am I afraid of? Dao master Lin Xian still couldn't suppress his excitement.
Qin Mu sighed.
Dao master Lin Xian must have suffered a huge blow and gone crazy. Could it be that Su Shanghua dealt him a harsh blow? Qin Mu blamed Su Shanghua in his heart and thought to himself, he's the beta overlord body after all, how could he be like me? Every time I make a move, I know my limits. Dao master Lin Xian was excited for quite a while, and he ran around the entire mountain. Finally, an old Taoist took out a Taoist robe and put it on for their sect master. Only then did Lin Xian calm down, and his face turned slightly red. He then returned to his normal appearance and became the calm Dao master of Dao sect again. He said apologetically, I lost my composure just now, please don't take offense. Qin Mu said with a smile, the Taoists on the mountain are going crazy from your scare. Dao master Lin Xian said with a smile, my Dao sect is like this, full of emotions and not caring about trifles. Qin Mu knew he was putting gold on his face, so he didn't expose him. I'm here to seek knowledge for a period of time, please teach me. The smile on Dao master Lin Xian's face was hard to suppress, and he said with a smile, dare I disobey? The Taoists of Dao sect had yet to come back to their senses from Dao master's shouting earlier. Dao master Lin Xian gave a loud shout and lectured. As Taoists, it's important to not be alarmed by flattery or humiliation, but the true me is the one with the most emotions, the true person. If you guys can't cultivate, you guys can face the wall for 3 days. The Taoists received their orders and obediently went to face the wall. The sect master couldn't hide his excitement. As he walked forward, he muttered softly, I injured him, I made him bleed. I injured celestial venerable Mu. Cough cough, cult master Qin, this way please. Qin Mu stayed in the Dao sect for over 10 days to learn Dao master Lin Xian's algebra Dao domain. However, his main goal was still Lin Xian's first qi of Khanate. The Khanate qi was the great Dao of the ancient celestial emperor, and it was extremely marvelous. Besides the 10 celestial venerables, only the Dao ancestors of the Dao sect had seen celestial emperor's corporeal body. Dao ancestor had taught Lin Xian, which was why Lin Xian's first qi of Khanate was so powerful. The final blow even injured Qin Mu. If it wasn't for Qin Mu unleashing his divine treasure realm at the crucial moment, it wouldn't be as simple as having his fingertip pierced. He might even be severely injured by Lin Xian. Dao ancestor used macroscopic algebra to construct the Khanate qi, while Lin Xian supplemented it with microscopic algebra. This could be said to be the closest Dao technique to the true Khanate qi. Qin Mu learned very seriously and asked if he didn't understand. Dao master Lin Xian also took this chance to ask him many questions, so Qin Mu taught him the new spirit embryo cultivation system that he had comprehended. Lin Xian was flabbergasted, and he was so shocked that he couldn't say anything for a long time. Only after a long time did he come back to his senses. He pondered for a moment and said, this technique and cultivation system of yours, only you can cultivate it now, I can't learn it. Qin Mu asked in astonishment. Why? Chapter 1205 Xiao Weisu back off. Lin Xian sighed and said, if I want to learn, I have to use the 19th sword form, facing calamity sword. to break the celestial palace and the 7 great divine treasures that I have painstakingly cultivated. Under this pressure, who can escape? Who is as strong as you? They will definitely be crushed to death." He paused for a moment and continued, "Furthermore, I'm afraid even ordinary people can't cultivate it. No one has such dense vital qi to open up the primordial chaos when they are in the realm of martial arts. To open up the heaven and earth in their mind and create a small universe. Not to mention gathering the spirit qi and spirit energy in their body to form a spirit embryo. How powerful are you? However, you only have the ability to establish this cultivation system now. Who else has the foundation to do so?" Qin Mu frowned slightly. Lin Xian said, "If this technique of yours wants to be passed down, if you want to pass it down, you can only reduce it and lower the difficulty of cultivation. If you lower the difficulty, the people of the later generations won't be as strong as you." He thought about it and said, "Even so, it will be much stronger than the system of divine treasures and celestial palaces." Qin Mu carefully considered it for a moment and nodded his head, sighing ruefully. "You're right, I'm a little too strong. I thought others were as strong as me, but I never thought I was the overlord body." Lin Xian's face turned black, and he pressed down on the hilt of the Dao sword, wishing he could pull out his sword to slash him. He then slowly let go and snorted, "If I wasn't unable to defeat you." Finally, Qin Mu learned the first qi of Khanate, but he couldn't refine the great algebra Dao domain. He excused himself and said, "I'm planning to go to West Earth to meet Su Shanghua." Dao Master Lin Xian's eyes lit up, and he was very reserved. He said politely, "If Su Shanghua challenges you, you must do your best and not give him the chance to take advantage."
Qin Mu understood.
"I understand, don't worry." Dao Master Lin Xian let out a sigh of relief and sent Qin Mu off earnestly. He sent Qin Mu far away before reluctantly returning to the Dao sect. Oh! Qin Mu carried the lantern forward and unknowingly came to the center of the primordial realm. The primordial tree was verdant and lush, covering half of the primordial realm. Celestial Venerable Zhao's celestial palace floated in the tree crown, while Celestial Venerable Yu floated at the side. Qin Mu was about to pass by the primordial tree when a voice suddenly rang out. "Celestial Venerable Mu, hold on." Qin Mu stopped and turned around. It was the master of Sky Prison, Left Assistant Minister Yin Shaoqing. Yin Shaoqing seemed to be seeing him for the first time. He went forward to greet him and said, "Celestial Venerable Mu, Celestial Venerable Shao wants to see you." "Celestial Venerable Shao wants to see me?" Qin Mu muttered to himself and raised his head to look at Celestial Venerable Zhao's celestial palace. Yin Shaoqing looked at him feeling anxious. He wasn't an easy person. His consciousness attainments were the highest in the celestial heavens. The 10 celestial venerables were all looking forward to him creating a consciousness technique on the Emperor's throne level. Of course, there were at least 3 people in the celestial heavens whose consciousness attainment surpassed his. They were the Grand Emperor's Heavenly Lady Chang, Celestial Venerable Gong Yun, Celestial Venerable Gong, and Celestial Emperor's son, God Emperor Lang Xian. These 3 people hid their identities and didn't reveal themselves, so on the surface, Left Assistant Minister Yin Shaoqing's consciousness attainments were still the highest. Even though Yin Shaoqing's consciousness cultivation was high, it was too rough. He had once fallen into the trap of Qin Mu and Zhang Baigui, and almost couldn't walk out of the illusion. Later on, he still listened to Qin Mu's suggestion, and went to Eternal Peace to learn the results of Eternal Peace's reform. He had quite some achievements over the years and was getting closer to the Emperor's throne realm. Celestial Venerable Shao should be the mysterious strong practitioner that ambushed the ghost ship on the surging river. Qin Mu said in a low voice, "I told him to back off because he was afraid of being trapped by the Tao of Taishu and unchanging divine art, so he left. He must have come to see me for the things on the ghost ship. Other than Celestial Empress' corporeal body, I'm afraid there's also Zhu Wuchen's corporeal body. There should also be the feathered forest guards. After all, he's the reincarnation of the ancient celestial emperor." Yin Shaoqing felt a chill down his spine. He wanted to block his ears and not listen to him, but he grumbled in his heart. "The more I know, the faster I'll die. I'm going to die." Qin Mu took a glance at him and continued to speak slowly. "The 50,000 feathered forest guards are all ancient geniuses. With a little training, their battle power will definitely advance by leaps and bounds, and they will become a great helper to him. Celestial Empress' corporeal body can threaten Celestial Empress, but as for Zhu Wuchen's corporeal body, he was killed by Celestial Venerable Hao and the rest back then without obtaining Zhu Wuchen, so he naturally has to sleep. Yan Shaoqing felt despair in his heart. His legs had no strength left, and he collapsed to the ground. Qin Mu bent down and patted him on the shoulder. He said with a smile, "Left Assistant Minister still hasn't sealed Southern Heavenly Gate and broken the Divine Bridge? Looks like you don't plan to rely on eternal peace anymore, so I won't give you a chance to live." The corners of Yan Shaoqing's eyes twitched. He raised his head and said, "I'm willing to cripple my own divine bridge and seek refuge in eternal peace. Please give me a chance, Celestial Venerable."
Qin Mu smiled.
"What's so difficult about that? I used my consciousness to seal this place just now, and even Celestial Venerable Shao couldn't see through it. He doesn't know what we're talking about." Yan Shaoqing was dumbfounded. Qin Mu carried the lantern and continued to move forward, saying leisurely, "However, you know this secret. If you don't rebel against the celestial heavens, I'll tell Celestial Venerable Shao that Heavenly Lady Yan will still die without a burial ground." He turned his head and blinked. "I'll help you keep this secret." Yan Shaoqing's face turned ashen. Qin Mu laughed and left with the lantern. Yan Shaoqing immediately shouted, "Celestial Venerable Mu, Celestial Venerable Shao wants to see you. Aren't you going?" "No." Qin Mu's voice came from afar. "I'm Celestial Venerable Mu, one of the 5 senior elders of the Heaven Alliance. Celestial Venerable Shao is my martial nephew, so you should at least call me Dao Brother. You want me to meet him? It's more like he's here to meet me." Yan Shaoqing was shocked. Qin Mu carried the lantern and moved forward. Thousands of mountains and rivers passed by his feet in a flash. He was strolling leisurely, but with Celestial Venerable Yu's lantern around, even if his footsteps were slow, they were still frighteningly fast. Suddenly, a beam of light chased after him from behind and only caught up to him after half a day. It blocked his path. The light dispersed and Celestial Venerable Shao looked at Qin Mu silently with a dark expression. Qin Mu smiled and put away the lantern. He said leisurely, "Shao Weisu, I'm not your subject. You have a favor to ask of me, so you came to see me. You actually want me to meet you. How great of a face you have." Celestial Venerable Shao said coldly, "Celestial Venerable Mu, don't forget that taking your life is just a flick of a finger to me. How dare you be so impudent in front of me?" Qin Mu laughed loudly, and his expression suddenly turned cold. "You need to flick a finger to kill me, but I only need to move my mouth to kill you. Your Majesty, not many people know about your reincarnation." Killing intent exploded in Celestial Venerable Zhao's eyes. "You are here to find the corporeal bodies of Celestial Empress and Zhu Wuchen. What a joke. The majestic Celestial Emperor is actually so blinded by greed." Qin Mu said indifferently, "If I give you Celestial Empress' corporeal body and Zhu Wuchen's corporeal body, can you use it to threaten Heavenly Lady Yan? Heavenly Lady Yan doesn't need this corporeal body anymore. As for Zhu Wuchen, you only treat her as a plaything. You want to offend me for these 2 things." Celestial Venerable Shao sneered. "Why can't you say that you want to offend me because of these 2 things?"
Qin Mu chuckled.
"Celestial Empress can abandon her corporeal body, but you can't. I can break the ghost ship, and I can also break Celestial Venerable Ling's divine art. If you offend me, you can forget about retrieving your corporeal body." Celestial Venerable Zhao's eyes twitched. Qin Mu flicked his sleeves and said, "You may leave." Celestial Venerable Shao gritted his teeth and walked away. When he came behind him, he suddenly stopped and tilted his head. "Celestial Venerable Mu, you are no longer under my control. You are growing very fast." Qin Mu said indifferently, "Thanks to you. During the Eternal Peace Calamity, I learned a lot from you." Celestial Venerable Shao smiled and floated away. Her leisurely voice rang out, "However, you don't understand the general trend. As long as eternal peace is still around, you will never be able to escape my control." Chapter 1206 Uncle wants to beat your father. The general trend? Qin Mu sneered and shook his head. He continued to walk forward. "Tai Chu, a million years ago, you could say this to Celestial Venerable Yu. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, You could say this to Celestial Venerable Yun. 10 years ago you could also say this to me. But now you can't say it anymore. He looked forward and saw the magnificent mountains and rivers of the primordial realm. All living beings were numerous, and the various heavens were beneficial. I'm borrowing power now to nurture the general trend. You seem to have the general trend now, but it's hard to say in the future. Your power is great, but it can be weakened. My power is small, but I can grow. This battle has just begun. West Earth, High Heavens Divine Sect. Qin Mu came here and saw Su Shenghua again. When the two of them met, Su Shenghua was playing with a 3 to 4-year-old little girl. Qin Mu looked at her and had a weird expression. Su Shenghua, this unfeeling person actually gave birth? That little girl was definitely Su Shenghua and Jing Yan's child. She had Su Shenghua's thin lips and a tall nose bridge, and Jing Yan's eyebrows and delicate air. Qin Mu walked forward and said with a smile, Brother Su is at ease, you are actually teaching your wife and daughter here. What's the name of my darling? Su Shenghua picked up the little girl and placed her on his shoulder. The little girl said clearly, My name is Su Mengqing. Uncle, you are that great devil king called Qin Mu, right? Qin Mu was astonished and said with a smile, Little girl, you have quite the guts to speak out the thoughts of your old father.
Oh, Su Shenghua lao ghét lao li.
Qin Mu reminded him. Be careful not to pee on your neck. Su Shenghua put the little girl down. You can't call him Devil King. You have to call him Celestial Venerable Mu. Your Uncle Qin is very powerful, not weaker than me. Qin Mu said resentfully. I just beat Dao Master Lin Xian back. Su Shenghua tidied up the little girl's collar and said without even raising his head. I've fought before too, and there were a few times. I even fought your brother Devil Ape. He's the Rulai now, entering the path through dreams every day and traveling the heavens and the myriad worlds. His abilities are also very powerful. Qin Mu said. He's my brother, it's not good for me to beat him up. I even beat Immortal Wang. Su Shenghua thought about it and said, The foundation of Little Jade Capital isn't as good as Great Thunderclap Monastery and Dao Sect, but these few years Immortal Wang has been very good at currying favor. He went to all parts of eternal peace to seek knowledge, and he actually comprehended a terrifying technique. It's very powerful.
Qin Mu sighed ruefully.
It's rare for me to come back, but you guys have all become old and famous. Su Shenghua stood up and took a glance at him. Are you trying to say that after not beating you guys up for so long, you guys have become arrogant? Qin Mu nodded with a smile and took out the flying knife he had gotten from the ancestral court. He gave it to the little girl Su Mengqing and said gently, Uncle wants to beat up your father. Go over there and play for a while before coming back. Su Mengqing ran away with her flying knife and smiled. She turned back and said, My father will beat you to death. Su Shenghua waved his hand and said, Actually, I'm not invincible among my peers in the primordial realm. I've fought with Xing'an, and his improvement is very fast. He's almost catching up to me. Qin Mu said with a smile, Xing'an occupies a divine weapon Celestial Venerable You, and there are runes of the great Tao of the ancient gods hidden inside. His cultivation speed must be extremely terrifying. Su Shenghua's footsteps were uneven, and he said indifferently, However, his path was wrong, so he still lost to me. I even met the real Celestial Venerable You. Qin Mu raised his eyebrows and asked guiltily, You defeated him? Su Shenghua said. He is mixed with Zhang Yunjian of the younger generation and is Zhang Yunjian's master. However, his realm is very strange, and the realm he taught Zhang Yunjian is also very strange. He frowned. This was the first time Qin Mu saw Su Shenghua frowning. This fellow had always been expressionless. No matter if he was shocked or overjoyed, he had the same face. Even Qin Mu had only seen him smile 2 to 3 times. As for frowning, that was even more unprecedented. However, Celestial Venerable Yu Lan Yutian made him frown. I can't understand his realm anymore. Su Shenghua let out a shaky breath and said, I've looked for him before. His realm starts with Spirit Embryo Realm, followed by Galaxy Realm.
Qin Mu nodded.
He knew when Celestial Venerable Yu opened up the Spirit Embryo Galaxy. However, the Eternal Peace Calamity was about to break out. Qin Mu had sent him to Yudu, so he didn't know much about his realm. The third is the Celestial River Tier. and the fourth is the four extreme heavens. Su Xinghua's expression became weirder. The fifth realm is the Yuandu realm, the sixth realm is the Yudu realm, and the seventh realm is the ruins of End realm. After 7 realms there's no so-called God realm, but he's much stronger than gods. Qin Mu was stunned and he praised, "These 7 realms have the same marvel as my realm. However, he walks from the outside while I walk from the inside." Su Shanghua took a glance at him. "You and I are very familiar. There's no need to flatter yourself." Qin Mu's body trembled slightly, and he released his spirit embryo divine treasure. Instantly, golden light shone brightly in high heaven's divine sect, and a divine treasure covered thousands of miles. In the center was the ancestral court, the divine tree, and under the tree was Qin Mu's spirit embryo. It was 300 yards tall. Above was the celestial heavens, above was Xuandu, below was heavenly Yin Yudu Yuandu, and below was the ruins of End. The celestial river coalesced and connected the various worlds. The gods of the various worlds guarded the place, and the Tao rumbled. Su Shanghua was astonished. He walked back and forth in his divine treasures and examined his surroundings. The astonishment in his eyes grew stronger. "Your realms are indeed reversed." Su Shenghua's expression didn't change, but his gaze was filled with astonishment. Lan Yutian first established the spirit embryo, then the galaxy in Xuandu, then the celestial river. Through the celestial river he established the 4 poles, and through them he established Yuandu Yudu and the ruins of End. When I met him not long ago, he was researching the 8th realm. Qin Mu's gaze flickered and he said, "His 8th realm is the ancestral court." Su Shanghua said. He said that it was a great realm, and if this realm was opened up, it would be even more powerful than the celestial palaces and celestial heavens. He's still deducing and isn't sure. However, Cultmaster Qin, you have to confirm the ancestral court first before confirming the other Xuandu, Yudu, and Yuandu. It looks like you are following the rules of heaven and earth, but it's incomparably difficult to cultivate. Qin Mu thought about it was indeed the case. Lin Xian had also said that. Lan Yuqian established another realm first, from the outside to the inside, but the difficulty was greatly reduced. Su Shanghua said, "If the 2 cultivation systems want to be passed down, your technique will definitely be the first to be extinct, while Lan Yuqian's inheritance can be passed down for 10,000 generations." Qin Mu opened his mouth, but only one word came out. "Yes." Su Shanghua looked at him without taking his eyes off him and said, "Neither too fast nor too slow. Are you unhappy in your heart? Do you have a feeling that your intelligence is being crushed, and you're doing meaningless things? Do you think you're the beta and he's the alpha?" Qin Mu shook his head and said, "I'm different from you guys. You guys are used to being attacked by me. I only get defeated by him once in a while. You'll get used to it." Su Shanghua said indifferently, "You have been to the ancestral court and know the layout of the universe's prehistoric times, but Lan Yuqian pushed it in reverse. He has never been there. He deduced this place based on the circulation of the great Tao of heaven and earth. The difficulty of him opening his realm is much harder than yours."
Qin Mu nodded.
"I'm using him to attack your Tao heart, and only then will I have the confidence to win." Su Shanghua said calmly, "Your Tao heart is sturdy, and almost no one can break it. Especially after the eternal peace calamity, your Tao heart has reached an unprecedented state. If your Tao heart is a realm, then the height of your realm is so high that not many people in this world can compare to you. Unfortunately, it's not." Qin Mu's gaze was bright, and he said with a smile, "However, my Tao heart won't be so easily defeated. Lan Yutian's talent indeed surpasses mine. He walks the same path as me, and my achievements won't be weaker than his. I will only be stronger than him. He knows I know he might not understand." With his hands behind his back he said leisurely, "Brother Su, in front of me you have no chance of winning." Su Shanghua suddenly raised his head, and the divine path domain burst forth. Su Shanghua was born in high heavens, and after he entered the world, he was famous for his divine arts. He had incomparably astonishing talent, and was skilled in adapting to situations. When he fought with his enemies he created all kinds of divine arts, paths and skills. The stronger his enemies were, the fewer moves he used, and the greater the power of his divine arts. His wisdom was still above his divine arts. Ever since he had started his path, he had rarely lost. He had only lost to Qin Mu and Son of Heaven Yin's disciples. The reason he had lost to Qin Mu was because of his Tao heart and adaptability. Back then, Qin Mu had undergone the teachings of the 9 elders of disabled elderly village, and no matter if it was wisdom or Tao heart, he surpassed Su Shanghua. His defeat by Son of Heaven Yin's disciple was the first time he had come into contact with an emperor's throne-level technique and divine art. Even though High Heavens was very powerful, the highest technique was only at the level of Southern Heavenly Gate and the True God realm. He had used a True God-level technique to fight an emperor's throne-level technique and divine art, so it was natural for him to lose. Yet ever since then, Su Shanghua had almost never lost again. He had entered the path with divine arts, but instead of calling it divine arts, it was more apt to call it wisdom. Entering the path with wisdom is better suited for the likes of him. His divine passage realm was more like the embodiment of his wisdom, and divine arts were just a way to express his wisdom. At this moment, his divine passage realm opened up, and was on par with Qin Mu's divine treasure realm. Qin Mu only had time to see the tens of thousands of great Tao rules in his great path domain. In the next moment, his Tao domain suddenly changed, becoming orderly from the scattered great Tao rules. Qin Mu saw the ancestral court, the divine tree Xuandu, Yudu, Yuandu, the celestial river, the 4 poles and even the spirit embryo formed by Su Shenghua's great Tao rules. In just a short moment, Su Shanghua had almost completely replicated his divine treasure realm. Oh! Qin Mu's face turned black. Su Shenghua's great divine passage realm had now transformed into a realm that was exactly the same as his divine treasure realm. This heaven part was indeed extraordinary. When I showed off my realm to him just now, he had seen it from the beginning to the end. That's why he could transform his divine art into my divine treasure realm in such a short time. The corners of Qin Mu's eyes twitched. This is blatant plagiarism. From now on, if anyone dares to say that Su Shanghua is an honest person in front of me, I will definitely beat him up. Granny Siyu had also entered the path with divine arts, but Granny Si's path was still slightly shallow compared to Su Shanghua's. The depth and breadth of Su Shanghua's paths, skills and divine arts far surpassed Granny Si's. Granny Si's treasure was called the Tao Wheel, and her paths, skills and divine arts were hidden in it. It should be called the 10,000 Laws Tao Wheel. On the other hand, Su Shanghua should have received Founding Emperor's guidance and cultivated his realm. His realm contained even more paths, skills and divine arts. It was even possible that Su Shanghua had already comprehended the essence of the paths, skills and divine arts, which was why he could be called the Great Path Domain. However, Qin Mu had incomparably strong confidence that Su Shanghua could at most imitate him. He didn't cultivate the cultivation system of the ancestral court, so even if his talent was heaven-defying, he couldn't be as strong as Qin Mu. If you imitate me, you will never be able to do what I did. The power of his divine treasure realm burst forth. This time, Qin Mu took the initiative to attack, and the first move he made was the 33 heavens of the sword realm. Even when he fought with Lin Xian, even when he fought with first ancestor human emperor, Yan Qiling, and the rest in the ancestral court, he had never taken the initiative to attack. He had always been forced to face the enemy and defeat them. That was because in Qin Mu's heart, other than existences like the 10 celestial venerables, there weren't many people in the same realm that were worthy of him taking the initiative to attack. However, Su Shanghua was definitely an exception. The instant the 33 heavens sword domain erupted, Su Shanghua also started to move. He wasn't proficient in sword skills, but at this moment, he was like a great grandmaster of the sword path. His sword skills were awe-inspiring, but in Qin Mu's eyes, he immediately saw that Su Shanghua was using Tao techniques to deconstruct sword skills. He was still different from the true sword path. The profound runes that constituted his sword skill were still Tao skills. However, Su Shenghua's sword move was extremely capable of transforming sword skills, and it even had a hint of the Tao runes of the sword path. This was no small matter. There was a vast difference between sword skills and sword path. After Qin Mu created Raising Calamity Sword, his attainments in sword skills were unmatched for 1,000,000 years. No matter if it was Yan Yunxi, village chief or founding emperor, they were all much inferior to him in sword path. Yet on the path of the sword, the Raising Calamity Sword was only at the initial stage. Founding Emperor's 34 heavens of the sword realm was the true peak of the sword path. However, Su Shanghua actually used paths, skills, and divine arts to imitate the sword path, using divine arts to express the deeper level of the Tao runes of the sword path. It was truly an eye-opener. His sword path collided with the 33 heavens of the sword realm that Qin Mu had executed, and he was immediately unable to withstand it. After all, he was only imitating with divine arts and wasn't truly simple. However, he managed to block Qin Mu's sword, shocking Qin Mu. Su Shanghua immediately changed his move. The 33 heavens of his sword path had completely vanished, and what replaced them was the 33 heavens of his divine art. It was as if 33 magnificent heavens were pressing down on Qin Mu. One divine art after another, the 33 heavens pressed together, and their power was vast and surging. Previously, his 33 heavens of the sword path wasn't his ability and was just an imitation. Now, the 33 heavens of the divine art was a true great divine art that was born from the foundation of the 33 heavens of the sword path. This was his true ability. Qin Mu wanted nothing more than to knock open Su Shenghua's head and see how he used his wisdom to reconstruct the 33 heavens in a short time, turning his sword skills into divine arts. One had to know that back then, in order to learn the 33 heavens of the sword path, Qin Mu had taken one step at a time. He had fought his way from the lowest level of Supreme Emperor Heaven to the highest level, and only learned everything from Yan Yunxi. Su Shanghua, on the other hand, used his divine art to reconstruct the 33 heavens in an instant, and evolved it into a divine art. In this split of heaven, Qin Mu admitted that he was inferior. Of course, there were specialties in every field. From the moment Su Shanghua was born in high heavens, he had walked the path of divine arts, breaking all techniques. All of his divine arts were created on the spot and adapted to the situation. He used his strong wisdom to break all of his opponent's divine arts, sword skills, and formations. He had immersed himself in it for dozens of years, and he had also experienced the most glorious years of eternal peace's reform. His divine art had entered the path and directly solved the essence of the divine art. In the eyes of others and even Qin Mu, it was something impossible, but he could do it. This was the reason why he was able to endure for so long without dying, never losing, and always winning. Qin Mu had always been improving, and he was also improving. Qin Mu's divine treasure realm spread out and collided with his divine passage realm. He said with a smile, "Brother Su is so powerful and your aptitude is so heaven-defying. I'm quite gratified. However, I promised Tao Master Lin Xian that I would let you feel despair." He was like a four-faced god that stood under the divine tree in the center of the ancestral court. Yudu, Xuandu, Yuandu, the four poles, the righteous gods of the heavens all moved at the same time. In the 16 celestial palaces, the primordial spirits of Qin Mu turned towards Su Shenghua. Su Shenghua attacked forward, and their domains clashed. Su Shenghua's Tao domain was instantly crushed and disintegrated. Su Shenghua immediately changed. His divine arts, paths, and skills were all targeted at Qin Mu's divine treasure realm. He first imitated Qin Mu's divine treasure and reconstructed it with his own Tao. Next, he transformed Qin Mu's divine treasures into his corresponding divine art. However, this wasn't the most crucial point. The most crucial point was his powerful deduction ability. After his divine art was broken by Qin Mu, he immediately deduced a way to break through Qin Mu's divine art. He was like a powerful calculator. Even if the power of Qin Mu's divine art far surpassed his, even if Qin Mu's magic power was thicker than his, he could still protect himself and break Qin Mu's divine art. He could even see the weakness of Qin Mu's divine treasure realm, which was that Qin Mu's divine treasure realm was his spirit embryo divine treasure. All of Qin Mu's power came from his spirit embryo divine treasure. As long as he destroyed Qin Mu's spirit embryo divine treasure, Qin Mu's abilities would become lower until he was defeated by him. However, the person he was facing was Qin Mu. When Qin Mu's divine treasure realm completely unfolded, he finally felt what despair was like. Above his head were attacks from the 49 heavenly Taos of Xuandu. Around him were attacks from the great Taos of the four poles. On the ground were the attacks from the 36 great Taos of Yuandu. And there were also sneak attacks from the 64 great Taos of Yudu. What was even more despairing was the formation of the stars of the heavens and the gods crisscrossing and changing. But this was not the most ruthless. The most ruthless was Qin Mu's primordial spirit in the 16 celestial palaces. Those primordial spirits weren't projections, but primordial spirits that were separated from 3 primordial spirit, undying God consciousness. The primordial spirits of Sword Celestial Palace were skilled in the sword path. The primordial spirits of Formation Celestial Palace were skilled in formations. The primordial spirits of Medical Celestial Palace were skilled in the poison path. And the primordial spirits of Forging Celestial Palace treated him like a piece of stubborn iron, wanting to beat him until he was round and smooth. Meanwhile, the primordial spirit attacks in the Consciousness Celestial Palace were the hardest to guard against. They attacked his consciousness with incomparably strong consciousnesses, making him muddle-headed at times and falling into illusions at other times. The most powerful thing was that Qin Mu had unified the power of the 16 celestial palaces. Not only that, he had even controlled the power of Xuandu and Duyudu, and even the world of Heavenly Yin. Su Shenghua knew that Qin Mu didn't use his full strength. Even when facing him, Qin Mu still held back. However, Su Shenghua didn't know how much power Qin Mu had held back. He only knew that the gap between him and Qin Mu was originally extremely small. However, after Qin Mu left the primordial realm and stepped into the celestial heavens, this small gap started to widen. However, Su Shenghua still wanted to prove himself and prove that he had the ability to compete with Qin Mu. He pushed forward with all his might, using all his wisdom to break the divine art that could attack from any direction at any time. He then rushed towards Qin Mu, who was in the ancestral court. He felt that his essence, qi, and spirit had reached an extreme realm that he had never reached before. This was the first time he felt that his mind was so clear, operating at a high speed in an incomparably clear state. He was like an incomparably calm lake, reflecting any fluctuations coming from the surroundings. In other words, his thoughts were like a strange structure formed by the interweaving of a calm lake. No matter which dimension Qin Mu's attack came from, he could react in time and take out the best countermeasures. Not only that, his consciousness was also high up in the air, taking over the entire situation with an incomparably calm attitude. He made the best adjustments to prevent himself from falling into a disadvantageous situation. The battle with Qin Mu had allowed him to obtain another huge improvement. This kind of improvement was something he, Lin Xian, Wang Muran, Zhang Rulai, and the rest had never experienced before. Even Lan Yutian couldn't bring him to such a perfect state. Su Shenghua, young master Su of high heavens, needed a Dao friend to motivate him. Lin Xian, Wang Muran, and Zhehuali weren't such people. Lan Yutian wasn't such a person either. The only Dao friend that could motivate him was Qin Mu. He tried his best to maintain his realm. The realm of the divine path was ever-changing. It was like flowing clouds, a vast sea, a desert. The path was formless, and the divine arts were also formless. He broke Qin Mu's divine art and destroyed his divine treasures. No matter which angle he looked at it from, he was always facing Qin Mu head-on. However, this didn't make him discouraged. Qin Mu's divine treasure realm was continuously destroyed by him, and the pressure on him became lighter. When he killed his way into the ancestral court and under the divine tree to face Qin Mu, he finally had the capital to face him head-on. Qin Mu stopped and smiled. Su Shenghua, you have finally reached my level. Su Shenghua also stopped fighting and bowed. Many thanks for your guidance. Cult Master Qin, I'm deeply sorry for destroying your divine treasures. However, you have already lost. Your divine treasures have been broken by me. So if you continue fighting, you will definitely lose. You are the beta. No.
Qin Mu smiled.
Look back. Su Shenghua turned back to take a look and couldn't help being astonished. The divine treasures that had been destroyed by him had already recovered to their original state, and there was no damage at all. He clearly remembered that he had broken through Xuandu, broken through Yudu, destroyed Yuandu, killed star gods, and destroyed the starry sky, yet everything was still there. Even the celestial palaces that were shattered by him were still there. Just like in the past, not damaged at all. The reason he was able to kill his way here was because he thought Qin Mu's divine treasures had been destroyed, so he couldn't recover them. As a result, Qin Mu's battle power became lower. However, from the looks of it, Qin Mu's battle power wasn't weakened at all. The reason why it was weakened was because he wanted to use this chance to stimulate his potential. Unchanging divine art?
Su Shengu Ha Mu Te.
Qin Mu nodded his head and said, I've already comprehended it completely, and I've also comprehended something even better. I can solve the unchanging divine art. Su Shenghua's gaze was slightly blank as he muttered, How far have you cultivated? How strong is your full strength? I haven't tested it yet, so I don't know how strong I am compared to the gods of the traditional cultivation system. Qin Mu pondered and said, However, it's impossible for a strong practitioner of the numinous sky realm to kill me. If a strong practitioner of the Emperor's throne realm kills me, I can ensure that I won't die. Su Shenghua's gaze landed on his face, as if he wanted to see if it was real or fake from his expression. Qin Mu revealed a sincere smile, making Su Shenghua feel that he was asking for a beating. Su Shenghua let out a shaky breath and resisted the urge to beat him up. From the looks of it, I'm the beta. The smile on Qin Mu's face grew even wider. Su Shenghua clenched his fists and slowly relaxed them. He pondered and said, I'm afraid only Lan Yuqian can compete with you on the same realm, but I don't know who is strong and who is weak. Maybe Lan Yuqian will be stronger, and the path you are taking is the opposite of his. However, his talent is even higher. When he deduces the ancestral court and the 10,000 paths become one, you won't be his opponent because his comprehension is deeper. The smile on Qin Mu's face froze. Su Shenghua continued, However, in terms of adaptability and battle experience, he's far inferior to you. His soul is missing a portion, and he's a little dull and silly. The frozen smile on Qin Mu's face bloomed again. Su Shenghua took a glance at the smile on his face and continued, However, when he finds his broken soul and recovers it completely, you won't be his opponent. At that time he will be the complete celestial venerable you. A celestial venerable you who can control the cultivation path for 1,000,000 years just by relying on his wisdom. Your cultivation path will only be forgotten by others, because others won't be able to learn it. The smile on Qin Mu's face froze again. Su Shenghua revealed a smile and said softly, I've seen the dragon rearing scripture of the dragon Qilin before, and it's indeed very useful. Cult Master Qin, your expression is even more marvelous than your divine art. He laughed loudly, and his hearty laughter spread throughout High Heaven's divine sect. Qin Mu was slightly embarrassed and immediately laughed out loud. Their laughter was filled with joy. Where did Lan Yuqian go? Qin Mu asked. The last time he went to Eternal Peace to fetch Mute, Blind, and the rest to the ancestral court, he didn't see Lan Yuqian. The last time he went to forge the broken sword, he didn't see Lan Yuqian either, so he was puzzled. Lan Yuqian can be said to be elusive now. Of course it's more likely that he got lost his way. Su Shenghua said. When I met him the last time he was lost and happened to pass by my High Heavens Academy. That was why I had the chance to discuss the Tao with him and benefited greatly. At that time he said that Grandpa Cripple and Celestial Venerable you couldn't teach him anymore. So he wanted to walk his own path to break the Hall of Fragrance. Qin Mu and Su Shenghua walked side by side and Su Shenghua said, He wandered around the various heavens, and he's a little stupid. Getting lost is a small matter, but there are still people chasing after him. However, when I saw him last time, I realized Celestial Venerable you was secretly protecting him, so he should be fine. Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief. Celestial Venerable you was still the one who was most concerned about Lan Yuqian. With him around there definitely wouldn't be any trouble. Of course, the prerequisite was that Lan Yuqian didn't create any trouble. He had a slight headache. Lan Yuqian's soul wasn't complete now, so he was always a little rash when doing things. Whenever he appeared, people would worry about him. Even if he accidentally touched the celestial heavens, I wouldn't be surprised. Su Shenghua said. His path is similar to yours. However, it's different from yours. You work hard in the mortal world while he has no distractions. It's more like he's following his Tao heart to walk in the world to comprehend the marvel of the great Tao. I can still understand your realm, but I can no longer understand his realm. He was slightly disappointed. Even if he could understand Qin Mu's realm, he couldn't imitate it. Qin Mu had already walked a path that was different from the rest, and no one could walk with him. Lan Yuqian's path represented the path that cultivators would take in the next tens of thousands of years, or even tens of thousands of years or even millions of years. Of course, this path would also contain those with high and low achievements, but there were still people on the same path after all. Oh, On the other hand, Su Shenghua's own path was like a summary of the million years of cultivation that had passed from the Dragon Han until now. His future achievements would also be extraordinary. Qin Mu stayed in High Heaven's divine sect to exchange their gains. Exchanging with Su Shenghua was the fastest thing to do. Both of them were geniuses that were rarely seen in the world today. Their foundations were deep, and their understanding was extraordinary. One of them had an unconventional nature, and his thoughts were scattered. The other had a steady nature and had meticulous thoughts, which complemented each other perfectly. During the time Qin Mu and Su Shenghua were together, Su Shenghua didn't even care about his wife and children. Jing Yan and Su Mengqing came to find Su Shenghua, but they were all sent back by him. Jing Yan even suspected that if she put the mother and daughter aside and put Qin Mu on the other side for Su Shenghua to choose between the two, Su Shenghua would probably choose Qin Mu without hesitation and abandon them. If there's a Dao friend, where is the need for a wife? She was rather indignant. In a short period of time, Qin Mu and Su Shenghua had developed many new divine arts and researched many new Dao techniques. When they met each other, both of their talents were displayed, and their comprehension was countless times faster than when they were alone. During this period, Su Shenghua had even entered the path once, allowing his divine art to take another step forward. Qin Mu was extremely envious. Qin Mu had learned his divine arts from Su Shenghua, and his understanding of divine arts was even deeper. Even the paths, skills, and divine arts of Xiantian Realm 5 had a tendency of learning by analogy. However, Su Shenghua learned even more from him. Even though Su Shenghua had peerless talent and wisdom, he didn't like to take risks compared to Qin Mu. Qin Mu felt that danger was an opportunity. He seemed to have many opportunities, but every opportunity was obtained with his life when there was great danger. He was fighting with his life while Su Shenghua stayed in West Earth to take care of his wife and teach his daughter, so he was naturally inferior to him. This time, Qin Mu had come to West Earth to interact with him, and his gains were the most abundant. Thus, it was natural for him to enter the realm of comprehension. Qin Mu had evolved into the 5 great minds and planned to tell Su Shenghua about Tai Chi, Tai Su, Tai Shi, Tai Chu, and Tai Yi as the 5 realms in the future. He said, I feel that the celestial heavens realm isn't the peak. There are still realms above the celestial heavens. They should be the 5 pre-celestial Tai realms. The current cultivation system needs to be changed. Su Shenghua was inspired by him and was slightly excited. He paced back and forth and pondered. The current cultivation system doesn't include these things. It seems like the reform of eternal peace is still very promising. Qin Mu guided him patiently. The ancestral court is there, and I have a territory now. If you're bored staying in West Earth, you can go take a walk. Su Shenghua was tempted, but his wife and children were all in West Earth, and High Heaven's divine sect was also here. He really couldn't bear to leave his home rashly. His family had tied him down. Qin Mu continued to tempt him. There's the Tai Chu mine, the Taiji mine, the Tai Su mine, the Tai Yi mine, and the Chaos mine. Of course, the Chaos mine has already been destroyed by my carelessness, but the Chaos Chi there has transformed into a sea of chaos, making it extremely mesmerizing. I'm a very stupid person, so I'm definitely not as smart as you. What I can comprehend you can definitely comprehend, or even more. Su Shenghua was even more moved. Qin Mu stopped trying to persuade him and said, If you want to go there, go to eternal peace. The Emperor and I left behind a spirit energy mutual shift bridge in eternal peace that can reach outside the ancestral court. I left my own seal at the crack of the ancestral court, so it shouldn't be hard for you. He got up to leave, and Su Shenghua sent him off earnestly. Qin Mu carried the lantern and walked far away. He suddenly turned back and saw Su Shenghua still standing in front of the mountain gate of High Heaven's divine sect, looking at him from afar. Qin Mu was stunned. He recalled how he had comprehended paths, skills, and divine arts with Su Shenghua over the past few days. He recalled Su Shenghua's great path domain, and the comprehensions of all kinds of divine arts came flooding in. It was as if a door had opened in his head, and he couldn't help falling into a state of comprehension. It was early in the morning and the fog was heavy. Qin Mu stood in the fog and looked from afar. The fog was also hazy, and so were the people. Jing Yan saw that Su Shenghua was still standing in front of the mountain gate, so she walked forward and said gently, Husband, Cult Master Qin has already left. Aren't you going to send him off? Su Shenghua looked at Qin Mu, who was in the fog, and shook his head. He and I are Dao friends, so there's no need for too much etiquette. On the contrary, I'm treating him as an outsider. Jing Yan pouted and looked at the fog in the distance. Qin Mu stood in the fog and fell into a marvelous realm of Dao. This stop lasted for 6 to 7 days. Qin Mu stood there, and Su Shenghua also stood in front of the mountain gate, never leaving. Jing Yan came to visit him a few times and couldn't help but shake her head. Strange friendship between men. Finally, Qin Mu came back to his senses from comprehending the path, and he shouted, "Dao friend Su, I'm going." Under the mountain gate, Su Shenghua cupped his fists and bowed to send him off. Qin Mu bowed back from afar and turned to leave. When Su Shenghua got up, he had already vanished without a trace. Chapter 12:10 Sacrally Yuran. Su Shenghua returned to High Heaven's divine sect with a hesitant expression. Jing Yan saw it and knew what was going on. She asked, "Husband wants to leave West Earth?"
Su Shenghua nodded that.
Cult Master Qin's visit this time showed me the results of his cultivation over the years. He also talked about the ancestral court and the Great Void, which aroused my interest. Jing Yan said with a smile, "Husband has always followed his own frame of mind. Your mind was indifferent in the past, which is why you could stay in West Earth for so many years. Now that you are moved, why don't you follow your heart?"
Su Shenghua hesitated.
"Now that I have a wife and daughter, it's hard for me to follow my heart." Jing Yan smiled and said, "Husband, do you think your wife and daughter have succeeded you? Or have they restricted you?" Su Shenghua was stunned. Jing Yan said with a smile, "Some people think that once they have a wife and children, they will be restricted. Their ambitions will be hard to unleash, and they will resent the heavens and the earth. Their families won't get along. Some people think that having a wife and children will give them more motivation to fight and work hard to improve themselves. Husband, are you the mediocre person in front, or the strong person behind?" Su Shenghua came to a realization and bowed in thanks. "Many thanks for wife's guidance." Jing Yan immediately helped him up and said with a smile, "Husband, I'm sorry. The chaos in the world will only get bigger and fiercer. The chaos will be so huge that it might not be inferior to eternal peace calamity. If you can't improve yourself, it will be hard for you to even protect your wife and children, much less protect your own people. Since you have the heart to improve and the path to improve yourself, you can go. There's no need to worry about us." Su Shenghua made up his mind and immediately packed up his luggage. He kissed Jing Yan and his daughter Su Mengqing before leaving West Earth to rush to eternal peace. Meanwhile, Qin Mu returned to the cube cage where the Permitha Ark was. This place was still sealed, but the seal was no longer able to stump Qin Mu. He walked in and saw numerous monks working hard to repair this magnificent ship. Oh! The Permitha Ark could be said to be the most magnificent ship forged by humans and gods since ancient times. It was even like a flying land that possessed inconceivable abilities. It could travel through the void and under the void bridge. Qin Mu knew how terrifying the power of the void bridge was. Even celestial venerables couldn't pass through the void bridge in the land of the Great Void. However, the Permitha Ark could. These monks of founding emperor era should have snuck into this cube's cage from Fengdu without a sound, so they didn't alarm the gods and devils of the celestial heavens. Repairing the Permitha Ark was extremely difficult. During the founding emperor era, it was because of powerful existences like Sacrally Yuran who used forging to establish the path. Only then could they forge the Permitha Ark in Carefree Village. There were no heaven-defying existences like Sakra in the celestial heavens, so they could only allow Permitha Ark to block them here. Furthermore, without the Ark star plate, they couldn't reach Carefree Village, so the celestial venerables of the celestial heavens weren't too concerned about this ship. Qin Mu came to the Permitha Ark, and it was almost completely repaired. Sacrally Yuran carried a bunch of blueprints and checked the connection and rune markings of every part with the numerous monks. He also went up personally to forge the imprint and was very busy. Qin Mu came forward and was slightly stunned. He saw that every monk had the face of Sacrally Yuran. However, their attire was different and the work they were responsible for was different. Li Yuran also learned old Buddha's Boundless Calamity Sutra. These monks are the embodiment of his dream. Qin Mu came to a realization. Back then in Brahma heaven of the Buddha realm, other than devil ape Zhang Kong and monk Ming Xian, Sakura Buddha was the only other person who had entered the small temple of Old Buddha. Old Buddha imparted his technique to them, but the teachings everyone received were different. After Devil Ape Zhang Kong received the teachings, he immediately fell asleep and snored like thunder. Monk Ming Xian was meditating and trying to comprehend the profound Dharma within to save everyone. Sakura Buddha, on the other hand, used his intelligence to try to decipher the Boundless Calamity Sutra from all directions. At that time Qin Mu wasn't taught, but his brother Qin Fengqin grabbed Old Buddha and ate him. The four of them had different attitudes towards the Boundless Calamity Sutra, causing the results of their cultivation to be different. Qin Mu didn't comprehend any Buddhism from the Boundless Calamity Sutra, because he didn't comprehend it at all. His gains were the least, so Old Buddha had directly imparted the Boundless Calamity Sutra to him. He used it as he pleased and didn't think about what logic was hidden in it. Monk Ming Xian wanted to save all living things so that there would be no more suffering in the world. He had learned a lot from the Boundless Calamity Sutra, and his attainments in Dharma were extremely high. However, he put in more effort, and he was getting further away from the true meaning of the Boundless Calamity Sutra. Even though he had comprehended all kinds of supreme techniques from the scripture, he was still unable to learn the true Boundless Calamity Sutra. Only Devil Ape Zhang Kong had received the true teachings of Old Buddha. His Buddha nature was too high. After receiving the scripture, he didn't care about anything else and just slept. He had the charm of an old Buddha. Sakura Buddha, on the other hand, put in the most effort. He wanted to become another Brahma Buddha and take another step forward to take revenge. He was scheming. He made use of Qin Mu to purge the power of the celestial heavens in the Buddha realm and eradicate the spies of the celestial heavens. He also couldn't forget his old relationship with Red Deity Qixieyu, his friendship with Founding Emperor, and his past. He couldn't forget that he was the leader of Heavenly Works God race, his hatred, and his identity as Heavenly King of War. Thus, even though his talent was extremely high, his gains from the Boundless Calamity Sutra were the least. He was also a person with a Buddha nature. Otherwise, it would have been hard for him to become Sakura Buddha, the 19th heavenly god of the Buddha realm. However, there were too many distracting thoughts in his heart. Even so, he had his own comprehension after comprehending the Boundless Calamity Sutra. Qin Mu looked at the countless monks of the Paramitha arc, Li Yuran, and sighed ruefully. Back then, because Li Yuran was infatuated with Red Deity Qixieyu, she didn't have the heart to fight. As a result, the Heavenly Works God race was almost wiped out. Only Mute survived and experienced endless suffering. Li Yuran escaped into the void and became Sakura Buddha, but he couldn't bear to part with his past. It was hard for all four of them to be empty, so he ultimately entered the mortal world. Now, he had transformed into a monk in his dream, but the monk was doing the work of a heavenly worker to repair the Paramitha Arkansas. To him, he was probably still in a dilemma and in a dilemma unable to free himself. He couldn't become Brahma heaven. His dream clone didn't have much intelligence, so he needed to personally guide them. Only then could he repair the Paramitha Arkansas. Repairing the Paramitha arc was a torture to him, and also a process of restoring his Tao heart. Qin Mu walked forward and greeted. "Are you Sakura Buddha or Li Yuran?" Sakura Buddha Li Yuran returned the greeting. "Celestial Venerable, I'm Sakura, they are Li Yuran." Qin Mu looked at the hard-working workers and said with a smile, "Buddha, you should say you are Sakura Buddha and also Li Yuran. Only then will you be enlightened." Sakura Li Yuran was slightly stunned. He thought for a moment and said with a smile, "You are here to play tricks again. Let's not talk about this. Why has Celestial Venerable come?" Qin Mu took out the star compass of Paramitha arc and said, "I'm here to return this item." Sakura received the astrolabe and put it away silently. Qin Mu asked, "Buddha, I understand the Paramitha arc quite well. Do you need my help?" Sakura shook his head and said, "There's no need, I want to come personally."
Qin Mu smiled.
"In that case, let me protect you." "Thank you." Qin Mu sat down and closed his eyes to rest. After an unknown period of time, the Paramitha arc was almost completely repaired by Sakura. Huge furnaces were also forged. Even though Eternal Peace had quite a number of heavenly workers and strong practitioners like Mute, they had yet to refine such a huge furnace. In terms of precision and microscopicness, Eternal Peace's refinement technique had already surpassed Sakura Buddha. However, Sakrabuddha was still number one in terms of scale. Suddenly, the surroundings dimmed, and the huge seal was like a huge landmass that formed a cube around the Permitha Arkansas. The forest gradually changed, and the land above the Permitha Arc gradually rose up, transforming into a huge face that hung down from the sky. The ground split open, revealing 3 huge eyes. They stared with interest at the Permitha Arc that was almost completely repaired. Chinmu raised his head to look at the sky dome. The cubic cage, no matter if it was the sky dome, the ground, or the 4 walls, were all pieces of land. On the land masses were all kinds of god seals. These lands were used to trap the heavenly works god race on the Permitha Arc, and they were also used to trap the Permitha Arkansas mutes. People had used countless lives to create a path. Countless clansmen died, and Mute was finally able to walk out of the seal alive. And at that time Mute was still a child. He walked out of the seal alone and faced the incomparably dangerous Great Ruins. However, Mute still survived and walked out of Great Ruins. However, he had to face the hearts of people that were countless times more sinister than Great Ruins. Chinmu looked at the face that had appeared on the sky dome with an expressionless face. To be able to break through the layers of seals so easily and make the land bulge into his face. On the other hand, the seal wasn't destroyed and was still on his face. Only the person who had personally laid down the seal could have such abilities. To be able to fold up 6 continents to form this huge seal. This kind of cultivation was incomparably dense, and his methods were also extremely brilliant. His face seemed to be formed by countless tiny cubes, and every cube was a sealing formation on a continent. Countless cubes formed his face, forehead, nose, ears, mouth, and even his eyeballs. Hee. The incomparably huge face opened its mouth and laughed. Countless rocks spewed out from its mouth and smashed towards the Permitha Arkansas. His expression changed, and the countless cubes that formed his face also moved, rising and falling, changing their height and position. His face was even larger than that of the Permitha Arc, and his laughter reverberated in this cube's cage, causing one's eardrums to buzz. For a moment, no other sound could be heard. Finally, the leader of Heavenly Works God Race, Heavenly King of War of Founding Emperor Era. Right at this moment, the land under the cube also changed on its own, turning into another face that was similarly huge. It let out a hurried voice and said with a smile, Li Yuran, as a Heavenly King, you, the leader of the human race, are truly useless. You only care about flirting with Red Deity, yet you can't even protect your own people. A face also appeared on the other 4 walls of the cubic cage, and he said with a smile, I was originally looking forward to fighting you, to see what kind of abilities you, the War Heavenly King of Founding Emperor, have, but I didn't expect you to have a silver spear and a crayon head. You look pretty but useless. I could only kill your clansmen and seal the remaining old, weak, sick, and disabled here. He had 6 faces and spoke from 6 different directions. I always wanted to take your head and ask for credit, but you ran away, so I could only torture your clansmen. At that time you were flirting with Red Deity, wasn't that so? The 2 of you loved each other so much that you were infatuated with each other. It was so melodramatic. And at that time I slaughtered your people. I saw them trying their best to escape from this place, trying their best to break the seal. The soldiers under me raised their butcher knives and slaughtered these fragile lives. They're just a bunch of blacksmiths, there's nothing they can do. They can't resist me, they can't resist my army. Sakra Li Yuran revealed a look of grief and indignation. On the Permitha Arc, the monks slowly raised their heads and looked at the faces in all directions. However, my soldiers got tired of killing them. I sealed them up so that they would be trapped here for the next 20,000 years. However, I was still playful, so I left a weak spot for them to seal and give them hope. The faces on the 6 walls of the cubic cage were very happy, and even their smiles were distorted. When they have hope, they will crawl into this trap, and then they will spend their entire lives trying to open the seal. However, they will all die in the seal. Hee. It's too time-consuming to kill them all. Let them die by themselves, and I don't have to dirty my hands. The smiles on the 6 faces became more distorted, so much so that even their eyes became distorted. In the end, all of the Heavenly Works God race died. Hee. They were silly like moths to a flame, throwing themselves into the trap. All of them entered this path that seemed to have a chance of escaping, and no one escaped alive. He laughed loudly. After I left this place, I was determined to find you, but I didn't expect you to go to the Buddha realm and become a bald donkey. That's right, you destroyed Founding Emperor's heavenly works god race, and all 4 of your limbs are gone. You are all alone now. Ha 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 ha. You won't take revenge anymore. That's right. How did you completely sever your mortal coil and enter Buddhism? It's because you think the person who exterminated your people was Red Deity. But that's me. His voice that came from all directions was filled with pride. It's me, Heavenly Sovereign Han, who built the wall formation in the celestial heavens. Sacrali Yuran was furious to the extreme and was about to wake up from his dream when Qin Mu's voice rang out and entered his dream. Buddha, I'm here to protect you. Just focus on repairing the Paramitha Arkansas. His consciousness burst forth, and he executed the Boundless Calamity Sutra. Sacrali Yuran fell into a dream again. Qin Mu got up and looked at the faces on the 6 walls of the cubic cage with an expressionless face. Heavenly Sovereign Han of the celestial heavens, you are still wrong. The heavenly works god race isn't extinct.
Celestial Venerable Mu.
Han Tianjuan's gaze landed on him, and there were 18 gazes at the same time, giving off an extremely uncomfortable feeling. His 6 faces all laughed. So it's Celestial Venerable Mu. Celestial Venerable Mu is mixed up with a traitor. Is he planning to rebel? Could it be that you are a descendant of the heavenly works god race? No, you are the descendant of the traitor Qin Yi. His other face smiled. Killing a Celestial Venerable in my seal shouldn't be a big deal, right? If I kill Celestial Venerable Mu, the 10 Celestial Venerables of the celestial heavens will be overjoyed. They will give me a promotion. The other faces of his became happy, and they all laughed. It's more than just promotion and wealth. They will give us endless glory, splendor, and wealth. It might even be our chance to become Emperor's throne. He laughed loudly, and the 6 vast lands were like incomparably viscous liquid that dripped towards the Paramitha arc from 6 different directions. These 6 continents actually became 6 huge water droplets. Qin Mu looked at the 6 huge water droplets, and every single one of them was extremely murky. However, what formed the water droplets wasn't soil but cubes. The entire water droplet was formed by a cube, and within each cube, there was a god and devil. They opened their arms, standing in the cube. They formed water droplets, but if one looked carefully, they could see that these gods and devils used their bodies as the most basic rune markings to construct a peculiar formation structure. This was different from other formations. Other formations use formation diagrams or rune imprints to form formations, while wall formations use spirits as the foundation of formations. The celestial heavens wall formation didn't just refer to formations. It also referred to the wall soldiers of the celestial heavens army. It was an army that was known for its impenetrable defense. Rampart wall formation was an ancient formation that was controlled by the ancient god Rampart Star Sovereign. However, Rampart Star Sovereign was clearly dead, and was taken over by Heavenly Sovereign Han. The Rampart Wall formation was also passed down. However, Qin Mu had seen Han Tianjuan's formation from West Earth Formation Master He before. Qin Mu had a deep impression of He's formation skills. As the #1 formation master of West Earth, she was extremely stunning. From the looks of it, other than the inheritance of True Heaven Palace's True Heaven Old Mother, there should also be the inheritance of Heavenly Lord Han. Qin Mu looked at the 6 water droplets falling down. The moment the water droplets separated from the land, the surface of the 6 water droplets and the cube inside immediately transformed into 6 divine cities that surrounded the Paramitha arc. When the water droplet transformed into a god city, the attitude of the gods and devils in every cube instantly changed. The mudra on the left hand transformed into a thumb pressing down on the middle finger, while the other 3 fingers stood upright. His right hand was clenched into a fist, and his thumb was pressed against the center of the fist. The gods and devils in the cube changed their postures, and the wall formation also changed. This was different from Formation Master He's formation. He's formation was an element that used rocks as the foundation of the formation. The cubes were covered with all kinds of basic runes. The runes on it couldn't change. Different rocks were pieced together, and different basic runes were also pieced together to form different formations. The strong point of the wall barrier formation was that the most basic element of the formation was the gods and devils of the wall barrier formation. Every god and devil could change their mudra skills, body shape, and even vital chi imprints. They could then change the structure of the wall barrier formation. Using living gods and devils as the basic elements of the formation was much more powerful than simply using a cube. There was a huge sacrificial altar in the center of each of the 6 god cities. The light in the center of the sacrificial altar was like a pillar that shot straight out and connected the 6 great god cities, forming a cube. The light that shot out from the sacrificial altars of the 6 divine cities took the shape of chains, as though the great Tao was interweaving together. Boom! Rays of light descended from the sky and landed in the center of the 6 sacrificial altars, transforming into 6 gods that looked exactly the same. They looked excitedly at Qin Mu, Sakra Buddha, and Li Yuran. They were none other than Heavenly Sovereign Han. He split into 6, and all 6 of them were his true bodies. There was no so-called clone embodiment. Qin Mu stood on the platform of the Paramitha Arc and swept his gaze over them. Every one of them had a spirit embryo, soul, primordial spirit, divine treasures, and celestial palaces. His body was also very peculiar. He had a body of flesh and blood, but his flesh and blood seemed to be formed by countless tiny cubes that could disperse like sand at any time to reform his corporeal body. His primordial spirit, divine treasures, and celestial palaces seemed to be able to change their forms at any time and reconstruct themselves. This heavenly sovereign Han's technique is truly strange. Qin Mu was astonished. Han Tianjun was probably a formation grandmaster of the celestial heavens. It could even be said that he was an existence that was about to use formations to achieve the celestial palace, an existence that was about to cultivate to the emperor's throne with his attainments in formations. Formation celestial palaces were a type of post-celestial Great Tao celestial palace. Blind was an expert in this field, and even Blind had cultivated formation celestial palace not long ago. Meanwhile, Han Tianjun had cultivated formation celestial palace far before Blind. He just hadn't cultivated to the emperor's throne realm. However, from his cultivation, he shouldn't be far from the emperor's throne realm. His attainments in the path of formations could basically support him to enter the emperor's throne realm. One had to know that even the 4 great heavenly teachers of the celestial heavens didn't cultivate to the emperor's throne with formations. Instead, they relied on their own wisdom to enter the emperor's throne realm. It was very likely that Han Tianjun would become the number 1 person in formation skills. Doesn't Heavenly Sovereign Han know that all of the great Tao runes of Star Sovereign Rampart have been deconstructed by Tao Ancestor, and his Rampart array has no secrets in front of me? Qin Mu had a weird expression. Even though Han Tianjuan's formation was incomparably exquisite, he had cultivated all kinds of formation runes in the wall barrier formation. Not only that, he had even broken the great Tao runes of the wall barrier formation. In his opinion, even the vast God City was nothing much. Even though Han Tianjuan's formation was exquisite, it had been completely broken. His formation was already outdated compared to Blind's formation entering the path with formations. The 6 heavenly sovereigns smiled as they looked at the almost complete Paramitha Arkansas. Today is truly a good day for me. With the Paramitha Arc, the great void and carefree village will be destroyed. This is a heaven-defying contribution. Killing Celestial Venerable Mu is another heaven-defying contribution. With these 2 contributions, my position can even surpass Heavenly Teacher, Heavenly King, and become the 3 dukes of the celestial heavens. The 6 great god cities suddenly trembled like a swarm of bees formed by countless bees. In an instant, the gods and devils in the cube changed their postures, mudras, and rune markings. The basic structure of the formation immediately changed. The bee swarm formation formed by countless cubes was ever-changing. 5 of the bees rushed towards Paramitha Arc, while the remaining 1 rushed towards Qin Mu. Han Tianjun attached more importance to Sakra Buddha and the Paramitha Arkansas. In his opinion, Sakra Buddha Li Yuran was a great expert on the numinous sky realm at the peak, and he was even the war god of founding emperor era. Sakra Buddha was powerful, and he was even more outstanding in battle. Qin Mu was still young, and even though he had the identity of Celestial Venerable Mu, his cultivation realm was still there. Using a god city to deal with Qin Mu was already thinking highly of him. Qin Mu looked at the countless cube bees that were surging over. The gods and devils in the cube changed their postures and seals, allowing the formation to be in a state of ever-changing. Meanwhile, one of them, Heavenly Sovereign Han, was like a queen bee, surrounded by mountains. He had his hands behind his back as he stood on the formation platform formed by numerous cubes, controlling the situation. Whoosh! The swarm of cube bees rushed onto the Permitha arc, and the rotating cube brought the gods and devils over. Everywhere it passed, the palaces, streets, cities, and even mountains and rivers on the Permitha arc were all pulverized by the power of the formation, recommending an app that was comparable to an old version of a book chasing divine weapon. The ferocity of Han Tianjuan's formation was truly rare. The cube bees got closer, forming a circle around Qin Mu. Qin Mu looked around and saw that the gods and devils in the cube were like pious sacrifices, changing their madra skills, body postures, and vital qi imprints in an orderly manner. They were like worker bees, listening to the dispatch of the queen bee, Han Tianjun. In that instant, the formation changed thousands of times. There were thousands of formation structures, but there was no repetition. It was dazzling. Let alone breaking the formation, even the formation structure could not be seen clearly. Furthermore, Han Tianjuan's abilities were more than that. He entered the path with formations, and he could make corresponding changes to the enemy's techniques and divine arts the instant he came into contact with them. As he got closer to Qin Mu, the smile on his face grew wider. He was about to receive this exceptional merit. At this moment, Qin Mu slowly raised his fist and spread his 5 fingers. Grand overarching supreme consciousness. Heaven Monarch Han's mind was blown, and he instantly felt a majestic and unmatched consciousness crushing his consciousness like rotten weeds, severing his connection with the gods and devils in the cubes. The cube bee swarm closed, and a killing formation instantly formed around Han Tianjun. Han Tianjun was astonished. He saw that the gods and devils in the wall formations had actually fallen under the control of Qin Mu's powerful consciousness. The power of the killing formation instantly erupted. Han Tianjuan's corporeal body expanded frantically, and the structure of his corporeal body was changing frantically. He tried to block the attacks of the wall formation, but in the next moment his body exploded, and his primordial spirit exploded. His divine treasures and celestial palaces were destroyed and disintegrated by the terrifying power. Celestial Venerable Mu, I underestimated you. But it won't happen again. The exploded Han Tianjun suddenly shattered into countless pieces, transforming into blood-colored smoke that soared into the sky from the wall formation. Countless incomparably tiny cubes pieced together in the air, and were about to form his body. At this moment, Qin Mu's body suddenly appeared in front of him. With a shake of his body, he revealed his 3 heads and 6 arms. His 6 hands moved rapidly, and in an instant, he imprinted countless runes into the body of Han Tianjun, who was currently forming. Most of Heaven Sovereign's body had already formed, and his lower body was forming. His divine treasures and Heaven Duke were also reconstructing, and his primordial spirit was also being pieced together by countless tiny cubes. He used formations to deconstruct everything he had. Even if he was shattered, he could reconstruct everything. This wasn't the path of creation, but the performance of cultivating the path of formations to the highest realm. It was also the embodiment of his divine arts establishing the path. Yet at the instant his corporeal body, primordial spirit, and divine treasures were formed, Qin Mu imprinted countless formation runes into his body. These runes actually completely countered the basic runes of his formation skills, causing his formation skills' basic runes to disintegrate. He let out a sharp cry, and his corporeal body, primordial spirit, divine treasures, and celestial palaces vanished like smoke. His entire body was like a burning incense, burning from the soles of his feet to his neck. His head then turned into smoke and vanished. There are only 5 Heaven Sovereigns left. We can deal with them easily. Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief. Suddenly, terror rose in his heart, and he immediately executed Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique. The grand overarching supreme consciousness formed a supreme consciousness realm around him to protect himself. Boom! An incomparably terrifying consciousness rushed over, and another Han Tianjun rode on a swarm of bees and shouted, "Consciousness? Celestial Venerable Mu, you dare to play with consciousness in front of me? Let me show you a true consciousness formation." The third eye at the heart of Qin Mu's brows opened up, and his third eye activated. The egg of Taichu, the grand primordium origin stone, and the Qin word land lit up, instantly raising his supreme consciousness realm to the extreme. His consciousness was extremely powerful, surpassing most strong practitioners of the Emperor's throne realm. In terms of the depth of his consciousness cultivation, he was only inferior to the Grand Emperor's Heavenly Lady Chang, Celestial Venerable Gong Yun, Divine King Lang Hua, and God Emperor Lang Xian. Even Xu Jun was inferior to him. With the augmentation of his third divine eye, the intensity of his consciousness explosion increased by 10 times. Not only did it resist Han Tianjun's consciousness, but it even started to retaliate. Han Tianjun changed the structure of the formation and made the basic formation runes in the cube beehive to form consciousness formation runes. His formation immediately transformed into a consciousness formation. This formation gathered the consciousnesses of Han Tianjun and the tens of thousands of gods in the formation. With the strengthening of the consciousness formation, its power was naturally extraordinary. The intensity of the consciousness that burst forth from this formation had also reached a level that surpassed a strong practitioner on Emperor's throne. As the number 1 formation Heavenly Lord of the Celestial Heavens, Han Tianjun had entered the path through formations. His research was extremely extensive, and he wasn't just relying on Star Sovereign Rampart's influence. He had once been to the Blood Rust Zone and studied the imprints on the sacrificial altar there, turning the sacrificial path created by the Masters of Creation during the primordial era into runes and fusing them into the formation. Not only that, he had also studied all kinds of Khanate Great Daos and Post-Celestial Great Daos, trying to integrate them into the array formation. This was where his capital as the number 1 formation Heavenly Lord lay. However, even though he had changed the wall formation into a consciousness formation, he still felt extremely strained when facing Qin Mu's terrifying consciousness. The moment their consciousnesses collided, he felt that his formation was about to collapse. Qin Mu utilized the great overarching supreme consciousness, and was about to counterattack when a second great consciousness formation came bombarding over, blasting into the supreme consciousness realm. Next was the third, fourth, and fifth great consciousness formation. 5 consciousness formations in a row that surpassed the Emperor's throne realm caused his supreme consciousness realm to sink. Qin Mu's body bounced up high, and he fell backward. Pung 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 pung. He crashed through the city wall of a god city on the Permitha, Arkansas. Qin Mu's body was almost pulled straight, and he crashed backward along the street. Soon he broke through the god city that had a radius of several hundred miles, and plowed a deep ditch into the ground. At the same time, the 5 rampart formations were like a swarm of bees that had undergone a myriad of changes. The consciousnesses of tens of thousands of gods and 5 heavenly sovereigns burst forth, and before they could even come into contact with Qin Mu, they had already bombarded him back continuously. Qin Mu found it hard to stop the decline, and his supreme consciousness realm collapsed continuously. Compared to the Grand Emperor's supreme consciousness realm, he could only be considered an imitation. The Grand Emperor was the strongest in the supreme consciousness realm. Qin Mu could only unleash most of the power of the supreme consciousness realm. After being bombarded continuously, the consciousness realm showed signs of crumbling. Whoosh! He was blasted out of the Permitha arc by the terrifying consciousness of the cube beehive and fell towards the land. Qin Mu took this chance to pull out his broken sword. Sword light chi shone on the 33 heavens, and in an instant, he sliced the swarm of bees at the front into 34 pieces. In the swarm of bees, Han Tianjun instantly felt that the formation was broken, and it was hard to continue. The power of the 33 heavens of the sword path was truly terrifying. The power of the sword path domain caused more than 10% of the gods and devils under his control to die. Luckily, he was a heavenly lord of formations, so the formation immediately changed, blocking the remaining power of the 33 heaven sword path and not causing more damage. At the same time, the other heavenly sovereigns immediately gathered the gods under the dead heavenly sovereign Han. The bees flew in all directions and gathered the bees. Qin Mu finally got a chance to catch his breath and quickly calmed his surging consciousness. He circulated his overlord body 3 elixir technique, and his vital qi and consciousness frantically circulated in his body. He sprinted in his spirit embryo, and his consciousness calmed down. Boom! He landed on that landmass, and the hurricane caused the forest to collapse in all directions. The land rose up like a mud wave, swirling and expanding frantically. Even a few mountains were lifted into the air by the mud waves. Whoosh! The 5 great bee hordes flew over and flew rapidly while sticking close to the ground. In the next moment they rushed over from 5 different directions. The bee hordes were also changing as they flew crazily while sticking close to the ground. Before they could reach Qinmu, they could easily combine together and transform into god cities. They landed on the ground with a bang and slid for 100 miles. They stopped in front of Qinmu and formed a fan-shaped encirclement. The 5 heavenly sovereigns stood on the sacrificial altars in the city and raised their hands. Suddenly, legs grew out of the god city, and they stood up with a rumble. Countless cubes in the central god city transformed into a huge weird eye with legs. The formation was activated, and a beam of divine light shot out. One of the 2 god cities on the left transformed into a divine mirror with 2 legs, while the other transformed into a long spear to attack Qinmu at the same time. On the other side, one of the 2 god cities transformed into a huge cauldron with legs. The mouth of the cauldron faced Qinmu, and divine light spewed out from the cauldron, transforming into a long river that swept out. The other god city transformed into a pagoda, and with a stomp of its legs, it leaped up to suppress Qinmu. Qinmu's body trembled, and he revealed his 3 heads and 6 arms. The broken sword in his hand split into 3, and he executed his sword Dao with one hand. He wiped the broken sword with the other, and it transformed into a long knife to execute his knife path. He shook the broken sword with his other hand, and the broken sword transformed into a brush. His other arms were executing divine arts to enter the path, setting up formations and refining strange poison. He retreated as he fought, and the 5 heavenly sovereigns controlled the strange eyes, divine mirrors, spears, cauldrons, and pagodas. Each of them had a different power as they attacked him frantically, covering tens of thousands of miles. Suddenly, the treasures formed by the 5 walls crumbled with a crash, and Qinmu was delighted. Grandpa Apothecary's poison path is working. Immediately, Qinmu's expression turned grim. He had to admit that Han Tianjun was indeed incomparably powerful. The instant the 5 great treasures collapsed, Han Tianjun immediately sensed that Qinmu had poisoned the soldiers in the wall formation. Qinmu's poison path and medicine path were combined, and he inherited it from Apothecary. Apothecary was the founder of the Celestial Palace of Medicine, and no matter if it was poison path or medicine path, he was at an unprecedented peak. Qinmu's medical path was inherited from him, and even though it wasn't comprehended by himself, it was Apothecary's spirit pill that allowed him to cultivate the Celestial Palace of the medical path. However, after cultivating the Celestial Palace of Medicine, Qinmu's comprehensions of the path of medicine and poison came flooding in. In the path of medicine and poison, Apothecary was number 1. Even though he was inferior, he was still extremely powerful. Combining the art of creation and the visualization of consciousness, he didn't even need to use spirit medicine and poison to create spirit pills and poison. He could use toxic Great Dao runes to poison his opponents, and use the Great Dao runes of spirit medicine to treat patients. He had already entered the path of medicine. He didn't poison Han Tianjun because Han Tianjun was incomparably powerful, and was a great expert that had cultivated his formation path to the numinous sky realm. Therefore, he chose to cut off his wings first and poison the soldiers in the barrier formation to death. In this way, Han Tianjun lost most of his abilities. However, in the next moment, Han Tianjun changed the formation of the army, and severed the Great Dao runes of the poison path. Soon, the runes of the poison path in the bodies of the soldiers were severed and refined into ashes. Celestial Venerable Mu, let me show you the ultimate marvel of the path of formations. Han Tianjun shouted, and the swarm of QBs suddenly swarmed towards the 5 Han Tianjun. Countless gods and devils in the cube collided, and formed a human-shaped formation around the 5 heavenly sovereigns. The 5 heavenly sovereigns slowly stood up, and their bodies grew larger.
Celestial Venerable Mu.
The 5 heavenly sovereigns were as tall as mountains as they looked down at Qinmu. Their voices boomed deafeningly. As a junior, an insignificant true god is actually able to force me to execute a battle technique of the path of formations. You should be proud. The formation on the bodies of the 5 giants changed noisily, and the basic formation runes that each god had made were different. Every one of them was like the fundamental particles that formed the human body. Their vital chi passed through them and flowed through the giant's body. This kind of magic power was close to that of an emperor's throne. Not only that, their consciousnesses also merged into one at this moment, and their divine arts became a part of the great divine art. This was the first time Qin Mu had seen someone who could actually cultivate formation skills to such a level. He couldn't help exclaiming in admiration, "If Grandpa Blind was here and met a top-notch strong practitioner of the path of formation skills like Heavenly Lord Han, he would definitely cheer like a child and use formations to defeat him openly. However, I'm not Grandpa Blind." Instead of retreating, he advanced and rushed towards one of the heavenly sovereigns. As he sprinted, he completely unleashed his divine treasure realm. Heavenly Lord Han was too strong, and it instead aroused his fighting spirit. His divine treasure realm opened up and Xuandu Yudu, the four poles Yuandu and the other worlds up and down, gushed out along with the resplendent starry sky. The celestial river passed through all the worlds and connected them into one. The place he stepped on was the ancestral court, and the 16 celestial palaces formed a vast celestial heavens. Ever since he had succeeded in cultivating, he had never had the chance to unleash his full power. Even when he fought with Lin Xian and Su Shanghua, he was suppressing his own power. And now he finally had the chance to unleash his full power. In the past, when he executed the divine treasure realm, he was still a little hesitant because if his divine treasure was broken, it would be hard for him to cultivate it back. Divine treasures were his foundation. However, he had already comprehended Celestial Venerable Ling's unchanging divine art. Unless it was a fatal blow, no one could truly kill him. Heavenly Sovereign Han, your physique is too big, and you have lost the agility that a divine arts practitioner should have. Qin Mu stepped into the void and passed through it, avoiding the combined attack of the 5 heavenly sovereigns. He laughed loudly and said, "You have incomparably strong power, but you have never thought that the operation of the formation requires time. I won't give you that time." The magic power of the 5 heavenly sovereigns was simply too vast, and their power was truly astonishing. Their palms carried incomparable power as they struck into the void. Qin Mu leaped out of the void and appeared behind the head of one of the heavenly sovereigns. He executed Amethyst Flower Visits the Guest to strike backward. This was the 5th form of his divine art of entering the path. Amethyst Flower Visits the Guest. His fingers trembled, and a lotus flower appeared. The lotus flower split into two into 4, and when it reached the side of that heavenly sovereign Han, it had already transformed into a sea of flowers. Countless flowers stuck to every part of his body. The cubes that formed Han Tianjuan's body and the gods and devils in them immediately felt their power flowing away rapidly and being absorbed by the lotuses. The most skilled technique of Amethyst Flower Visits the Guest was to break other people's divine arts and formations. Qin Mu had once used this divine art to break all the strong practitioners on East Pole Heavenly Dragon Island, making them unable to retaliate. 9 heavens of fire. Another heavenly sovereign Han pounced over, and his body trembled. Countless cubes flew out from his body and transformed into the 9 heavenly fire formation, enveloping that heavenly sovereign Han. Qin Mu's divine treasures were completely spread out, and in the 16 celestial palaces, the primordial spirits mobilized the power of the celestial palaces to execute the same divine art. The 16 celestial palaces swirled and transformed into the shape of a Taiji diagram, enveloping the 2nd heavenly Lord Han. The moment that heavenly sovereign Han Tianjun executed the fire-parting 9 heavens great array to break Qin Mu's Amethyst Flower Visits the Guest, he was instantly covered by Qin Mu's great divine art. The Taiji mine in Qin Mu's ancestral court suddenly trembled, and the Tao of Yin and Yang burst forth from the Taiji mine. The body of heavenly Lord Han immediately transformed into 2 streams of air, one black and one white, unable to fuse together anymore. The virtual stage of Tai Chi, the 9th form of Qin Mu entering the path divine art. The so-called void form was the Taiji, and the void form was the corporeal body ascending into the void. However, in Qin Mu's great divine art, it wasn't ascending into the void. Instead, it was transforming into the form of Taiji, transforming it into Yin and Yang Qi. When Yin and Yang Qi were sent into the void, their souls would vanish completely. Before that heaven sovereign Han had completely vanished, The other 3 heaven sovereigns had already slaughtered their way into Qin Mu's divine treasure realm. Their divine arts had destroyed Xuandu, Heaven Duke Qin Mu, and even the Great Tao. The next to collapse was Yudu, and the one to die was Earth Count and Qin Mu. Next, Yuandu cracked, primordial tree broke, heavenly Yin shattered, ruins of En destroyed. The 3 heavenly sovereigns slaughtered their way into the ancestral court and shattered the celestial palaces. Even Qin Mu's primordial spirit in the consciousness celestial palace wasn't their match. Their consciousnesses burst forth and destroyed the consciousness celestial palace easily. Even though Qin Mu had destroyed 3 of their bodies and broken 3 walls, they still had the upper hand. The 3 heavenly sovereigns attacked the center of the ancestral court and worked together to attack Qin Mu. Qin Mu tried his best to resist, but in the next moment, he was turned into a pile of mush by the 3 heavenly sovereigns. He's finally dead. The 3 heavenly sovereigns stood in front of the mud and each let out a long sigh of relief. One of them had a grim expression and muttered, "This is the first time I've seen such a powerful true god. He actually destroyed half of the troops in my wall formation and destroyed 3 of my true bodies." Suddenly, a sword tip pierced through his huge body, stabbing into the back of his body and out of his heart. Chapter 12:15 The Liberated Sakra Li Yuran. This sword was Qin Mu's facing calamity sword. When the sword entered his body, it first broke through Heaven Sovereign Han's celestial palace, then broke the divine bridge, shattered the celestial being, broke through life and death, and destroyed his celestial palace and divine treasures. His divine treasures and celestial palaces crumbled, and his corporeal body exploded as well, pulverized by the power in his body. However, since Han Tianjun had cultivated himself to the level of entering the path through formations, if the formation markings didn't die, he wouldn't die and could reassemble at any time. It could be said that Han Tianjun was the nemesis of Qin Mu's 3rd form of calamity sword. However, Qin Mu's abilities weren't limited to that. When his sword stabbed into Han Tianjun's body, the Great Tao runes that specialized in restraining the wall formation runes also entered Han Tianjun's body, making his formation path unable to be unleashed. Another heavenly sovereign Han collapsed and he died. The other 2 heavenly sovereigns were alarmed and hurriedly turned around to see where this sword had come from. They didn't know if they didn't look, but when they did, their hearts turned cold. However, the devastated divine treasure realm that had been destroyed by them had actually been restored to its original state. Heavenly palaces floated and formed the celestial heavens. Qin Mu's primordial spirit reappeared, and the sun, moon, stars, and Xuandu reappeared in the sky. The Yuandu realm grew even faster than the breathing earth. The primordial tree also grew lushly, connecting heaven and earth. It was as if it had never been destroyed. The 4 poles, Yudu, heavenly Yin, Xuandu, and even the ancestral court were all exactly the same as before. The celestial river was vast and majestic as it passed through the various worlds. Ancient gods Qin Mu stood in their territories and controlled the paths, laws in the divine treasure realm. That sword just now was a great divine art from Qin Mu's divine treasure. Heavenly Lord Han, how many true bodies do you have in total? A voice rang out, and the 2 heavenly sovereigns hurriedly turned their heads. They saw that Qin Mu, who had been beaten into a pile of mud by them, was standing in front of them perfectly fine, while the mud on the ground had vanished without a trace. Qin Mu was still in his most perfect state. He didn't seem to have any exhaustion or injuries. The 2 heavenly sovereigns immediately pulled back, and the 2 of them retreated in the same direction. Their bodies suddenly collided, and the 2 heavenly sovereigns actually fused together. The wall formation also fused together, transforming into an even larger giant. The power of this giant was even stronger. After all, it was the fusion of 2 great wall formations. Even though the reaction speed of the divine art was slower, the power of the divine art was truly terrifying. With one strike, it pierced through Qin Mu's divine treasure realm and sprinted outwards. He didn't dare to continue fighting. If it was before, he would still dare to fight with 6 true bodies. However, now that the 4 true bodies had died in Qin Mu's hands, he no longer dared to risk his life. Qin Mu's hands moved, and the 16 celestial palaces swirled, transforming into a Taiji diagram that shrouded Heaven's sovereign Han. It was the great divine art of the virtual stage of Tai Chi among the countless cube bodies around Han Tianjun. The wall formation godfiends were assimilated into the yin and yang qi, and frantically escaped from his body. Han Tianjun shrunk rapidly and became one size smaller. However, in the next moment, his divine art burst forth, and he actually broke through 3 celestial palaces in one strike. He shattered the 3 celestial palaces and the 3 Qin Mu's primordial spirits in them, escaping. Qin Mu was also shocked by him. He immediately raised his hand and slashed with his sword, breaking the 33 heavens and stabbing towards the back of Han Tianjun's heart. Han Tianjun roared angrily and waved his hand backward. His arm was instantly severed into 33 pieces. He continued to rush forward, abandoning the formation gods that had formed his arms. The wall barrier formation was an army of the celestial heavens, and the cultivation of the gods and devils wasn't too high. Most of them were gods of the true god and Jade Pool realm. It didn't matter if they died, as their lives weren't as important as his. Qin Mu Yudu Earth Count appeared and used the Styx River as a whip to wrap up Heaven Sovereign Han and cut down the 3 souls and 7 spirits of the formation army. Qin Mu, Heaven Duke, appeared in the sky and raised his hand to unleash 49 heavenly Dao divine arts, blasting all parts of Heaven Sovereign's body apart. The heavenly fire burned the gods and devils in the wall formations to death. The primordial tree swept over, tearing his skin and flesh apart. The 4 ancient gods of the 4 poles, Qin Mu, transformed into green dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise to attack. The star gods of the heavenly cycle laid out an inescapable net, and Qin Mu shattered thousands of primordial spirits of gods and devils with one strike. Even so, Han Tianjuan's speed still became faster. Wherever he passed, the primordial tree would break, the underworld river would crumble, Qin Mu of heavenly Yin would die, and Qin Mu of the 4 poles would be beheaded. His death was extremely miserable. Even Heaven Duke and Qin Mu fell from Xuandu from his blow. Qin Mu sighed to himself. My abilities are still lacking. Even though my divine art is here, my cultivation realm isn't there yet. I can defeat Han Tianjun, but I definitely can't kill him. Han Tianjun barged his way out of Qin Mu's divine treasure realm and ran for his life. He shouted, "Celestial Venerable Mu, you've done me wrong. When I recover my power, I'll make sure you never reincarnate." Before he could finish his sentence, he suddenly stopped and saw a handsome Buddha standing in front of him. It was none other than Sakra Buddha Li Yuran. While Qin Mu was fighting with him, Sakra Buddha Li Yuran had already repaired the Permitha Arkansas. Han Tianjuan's body was too big, and he couldn't stop the inertia of his body. He could only grit his teeth and rush forward. The shattered cubes around his body kept falling down. Because the wall formation godfiend in the cube had been injured in the divine treasure realm, it affected the operation of the wall formation and was mercilessly abandoned by him. Sakra Li Yuran had a solemn expression. When he saw him getting closer, the Buddha image on his face became abnormally furious. Flames of fury blazed around his body. He was originally fated with Buddhism, but the feelings in his heart were hard to understand. When his clansmen were attacked, he always thought that it was Red Deity Chishayu who killed his clansmen, so he went to the Buddha realm in despair. Never did he expect that it was Heavenly Lord Han who had made a move to frame Red Deity. Heavenly Lord Han, didn't you want to see why I'm called Heavenly King of War? The fury on Li Yuran's face was only a fraction of the fury in his heart. At this moment, this fury burst forth, and his Buddha nature, Buddha cultivation, and all of his Buddhism transformed into the fury of the furious king. The flames burned the sky and distorted space. In the flames, Qin Mu saw countless Buddhas. They became sinister and fierce in their fury. They no longer looked like Buddhas but like they were somewhere between Buddha and devil. The heavenly king of war's anger transformed from his fury was like the flames in a blacksmith's furnace. Red flames, green flames, white flames, all kinds of colors. He faced Han Tianjun, and heavenly king of war's fury twisted his face. He was no longer handsome, and the structure of his body also underwent a peculiar transformation. He grew 1,000 arms. His weapon was no longer a monk staff or Buddha beads. Instead, it was a hammer, a hook sword, a spear, an axe, all the weapons he could forge. 1,000 arms, 1,000 kinds of divine weapons. This was his bright king armament. He was originally a heavenly worker that forged weapons for founding emperor. Even though he was a blacksmith, He had a handsome face. He had forged too many weapons in his life. Even founding Emperor's carefree sword Carefree Village was forged by him. As a heavenly worker, understanding the attributes and personality of every weapon was his specialty. He was able to become the heavenly king of war not only because he could forge exceptional divine weapons to arm the gods under founding emperor, but also because when the furious Li Yuran picked up the divine weapons he had forged, he would become a terrifying devil king. In this state, Li Yuran was definitely a battle machine. A killing machine. Heavenly Lord Han met Sakura Li Yuran head-on, and astonishment appeared in his eyes. Those terrifying weapons burst forth with a sharpness that he had never seen before in Li Yuran's hands. They simply sliced into his body like knives slicing through tofu. It was like a butcher dismembering an ox. The formation that he was proud of met Li Yuran's knife, axe, and divine weapons and was easily sliced apart, dissected and dismembered. In just a face-off, he was stripped of all the cubes of the wall formation, and his true body appeared in front of Li Yuran. He raised his hand to block, but when the 1,000 divine weapons landed, Han Tianjun heard the sound of his bones cracking and his skull being sliced open. He even heard the sound of the great Dao runes in his body shattering. Li Yuran was like a crazy devil king with 1,000 arms. He brandished thousands of divine weapons and smashed them at him furiously, flattening him and smashing him into pieces. He treated him like a piece of stubborn iron, smashing him into pieces. The formation runes in Han Tianjuan's body crackled and exploded. He wanted to recover his corporeal body, but no matter how he tried, he would be shattered again. Not only that, the formation runes he could control were becoming fewer. Those runes had already been smashed into smithereens by Sakura Li Yuran. He was incomparably terrified. He wanted to beg for mercy and save his life, but he couldn't say anything at this moment. Qin Mu stood far away and watched this scene quietly. Li Yuran had already created a huge pit on the ground, and the bottom of the pit was incomparably smooth. This was the basic skill of a blacksmith. Li Yuran's basic skills were the most solid. Han Tianjun had already been smashed into a thin piece of paper. It was incomparably thin and had almost no thickness. However, Li Yuran was still furious as she smashed it down frantically. In his fury he had no Buddha heart or Buddha nature, only boundless fury. He was the heavenly king of war. After a long time the sound of heavy blows finally stopped. Li Yuran raised his head in the midst of Duke Ming's fury and looked up at the sky. Tears of fire flowed down from his eyes. As a heavenly king of war he could no longer cry. Qin Mu saw that behind the flames a celestial palace had appeared. It was also burning with fury, and the entire celestial palace was in flames. There was no one in front of Numinous Sky Hall. At this moment, Sakura Buddha Li Yuran's primordial spirit was sitting on the emperor's throne with a furious expression, but his gaze was sorrowful. He didn't become an emperor through dharma, he became one through anger. On this day, there was one less Buddha and one more strong practitioner on emperor's throne in the world. Qin Mu walked forward, and Sakura Li Yuran, who was in the pit, slowly floated up and landed on the ground. The fury of the heavenly king of war on his body became smaller, and the flames were no longer as vigorous. However, they never extinguished. He didn't return to his handsome face, and it looked slightly sinister. "Are you Sakura Buddha or Li Yuran?" Qin Mu asked. "Or should I say you are the heavenly king of war?" "Me." Li Yuran dispelled 1,000 arms and lowered his head to look at his hands that were burning with the fury of the heavenly king of war. His hands were no longer as fair and delicate as before. Instead, they were rough and full of calluses. Next, he raised his head calmly and said with a rough voice, "I'm the heavenly king of war."
Qin Mu sighed.
"Buddha ancestor imparted the Boundless Calamity Sutra to you in hopes that you could accept Buddhism and become a Buddha. You have the heart of Buddha and the nature of Buddha. He doesn't want you to transform your Buddha heart and Buddha nature into a raging fire. Buddhism can't save all living beings, it's even hard to save oneself." Li Yuran walked towards the Permitha Arkansas. "I'm better like this now." Qin Mu was stunned and followed him. He understood that the current Li Yuran was no longer the heavenly worker Li Yuran of the past. Li Yuran was elegant, handsome, and extremely talented. He was also no longer Sakura Buddha. Sakura Buddha was dressed in white, and he was handsome. His appearance was solemn, and his words were elegant, interesting, and hidden. Now, he was the battle god under founding emperor. He was going to drive the Permitha arc to the land of the Great Void with his comrades, to Carefree Village, to fight, to take revenge, to burn his anger as much as he wanted. There was no love in his heart, only the desire to take revenge and fight. When Brahma Buddha imparted the Boundless Calamity Sutra to him, did he anticipate this day? Qin Mu stood on the Permitha arc in a daze. The huge battleship gently stopped, and the incomparably huge pill furnaces ignited with flames, pushing the huge ship forward. Li Yuran became Sakra Buddha, and it was the effect of Buddhism. Sakra became the battle god, and it was the effect of the Boundless Calamity Sutra. Just now, Sakra Li Yuran was repairing the Permitha arc in his dream, and he transformed into thousands of people. However, the appearance of Han Tianjun made countless of himself in his dream only have anger and revenge. Qin Mu looked at the god controlling the star compass and controlling the Permitha Arkansas. He thought to himself, one dream in one world is a disaster. He only had fury and revenge left in his dream, and when he woke up, it was the heavenly king of war that woke up. Or rather, he never woke up, nor was he willing to. Brahma Buddha's Boundless Calamity Sutra was too marvelous. It actually affected a person's frame of mind and form. Everyone cultivated the Boundless Calamity Sutra, and their comprehensions were all different. Sakra Buddha Li Yuran had become the heavenly king of war in his dream, and he had also cultivated to the emperor's throne realm. Brahma's frame of mind was unfathomable, and his wisdom was also unfathomable. He could really foresee Sakra Buddha's future. The speed of the Permitha arc gradually increased. Suddenly, the countless runes on the surface of the arc lit up one by one. However, the runes on the surface of the arc were only a part of the runes on the entire ship. In reality, there were countless complicated runes inside the ark. This was also the reason why the celestial heavens couldn't repair the Permitha ark even after sealing it. Even Mistress Yuanmu Shirchilua couldn't reconstruct it. When all the runes of the ark lit up, the ship suddenly sank gently and entered another time and space. That was Yudu. Even though Qin Mu had all of the blueprints of Permitha ark, he couldn't help but praise the civilization of founding emperor era. Such a huge ship had such a complicated structure, and no mistake could activate it. Yet, the heavenly workers of that era were able to complete this seemingly impossible task without any mistakes. It was truly remarkable. Even though our eternal peace has many heavenly workers, our overall cooperation is still inferior to founding emperors. When eternal peace can forge such a behemoth, we will have the power to fight the celestial heavens. He thought about it and thought to himself, it's impossible to fight with the celestial heavens, but at least I have the ability to stomp my feet. In front, Fengdu was in sight. The world formed by the Horn of Earth Count had already left Heavenly Yin World and came to Yudu. When the Permitha arc reached Fengdu, the huge world had already shrunk countless times under the suppression of the strong practitioners like Due, Martial Arts Heavenly Teacher, and Heavenly Teacher Fisherman. Even so, Fengdu was still extremely huge. Fengdu flew over and landed on the Permitha Arkansas. St. Woodcutter saw that Qin Mu was also on the ark, and his face turned black. He didn't know if it was because he didn't want him to go to the Great Void or if he still remembered how Qin Mu had sent him flying. You want to go to the Great Void too? St. Woodcutter snorted and said with a grim face, Why are you going to the Great Void? I'm a celestial venerable of the Heaven Alliance, so of course I'm going to the Great Void to help the celestial heavens eliminate you rebels. Qin Mu said righteously. St. Woodcutter was very displeased and scolded. You are messing around again. You are responsible for the fate of eternal peace. If you appear on the battlefield, will the 10 celestial venerables be able to tolerate eternal peace? Go back.
Qin Mu smiled.
I'm proficient in the art of creation, so wouldn't it be easy if I don't want to be recognized? St. Woodcutter was speechless from anger. There are numerous gods from the extraterritorial celestial heavens, and they are all talents. There are also many that cultivate all kinds of divine eyes. Do you really think no one can see through your art of creation? Qin Mu consoled him. Teacher, don't worry. Even if they recognize me, what can they do if I don't admit it? Let's just talk nonsense. Besides, I'm going to beat up rebels like you. I won't do anything reckless. Celestial Venerable Mu of the celestial heavens is extremely righteous. Although he's young, he dares to rush to the front lines and suppress rebels like Qin Yi and Langhua. Saint Woodcutter stared with his eyes wide open. After a moment he said helplessly, "You have learned to talk nonsense? Forget it, I can't control you." Qin Mu stayed on the Permitha arc, and it suddenly tunneled into the void and vanished from Yudu. Qin Mu couldn't help but marvel at founding Emperor era's forging skills. Every era in history had its own areas of expertise. The Dragon Han era was the era of enlightenment, and all kinds of divine arts, paths, and skills emerged endlessly. The system of divine treasures and celestial palaces was formed and developed in that era. Crimson Light era focused on the corporeal body and primordial spirit, making the corporeal body and primordial spirit incomparably strong. The High Emperor era was an era of great success in paths, skills, and divine arts. During the High Emperor era, there were the most strong practitioners of the Emperor's throne realm. Just the primordial realm alone had at least 30 strong practitioners of the Emperor's throne realm. The founding Emperor era had left behind numerous heavy weapons and divine weapons. Carefree Village, Carefree Sword, Permitha Arc, and Heavenly Workers were extremely important in this era. The current era of eternal peace was still short, and it wasn't as flourishing as the previous 4 eras. In the land of the Great Void, as only Celestial Venerable Hua and Celestial Venerable Su were in charge, the battle between the two sides entered a tug of war, a battle of attrition. Both sides built cities and attacked each other. Because Celestial Venerable Hua and Celestial Venerable Su had to face the two strong practitioners of founding Emperor Qin Yi and Divine King Langhua, they didn't dare to act rashly. In addition, there was the Great Void and Yudu in the Great Void, and this little Earth Count of Yudu was a biased person. He didn't attack the Great Void in Yudu, so he could only exhaust himself. The number of Masters of Creation in Carefree Village and the Permitha Void was far inferior to that of the Celestial Heavens. Qin Yi and Langhua definitely wouldn't be able to handle it. Son of Heaven Yin led the army of North Heaven and Mingdu to settle in Little Yudu to intimidate Qin Fengqing, and the battle line stretched across the Great Void and Yudu. On the land of the Great Void, there were even more armies scattered about, and they had set up their camps to cultivate. The 4 great heavenly teachers and 4 great heavenly kings of the celestial heavens each led an army. The Celestial River Navy also attracted the water of the Celestial River, allowing it to descend into the Great Void and attack from the waterway. When the Celestial River entered the Great Void, it was much easier to transport resources. However, the celestial heavens still needed to guard the celestial river heavily, and used the newly constructed 4 deities' divine weapons to suppress the crumbling void. It took a lot of money and manpower. This battle had already dragged on for several years, and both sides were attacking each other with victory and defeat. However, a large-scale battle was unbearable for both sides, and there were too many casualties. Thus, the large-scale war had only started 2 years ago. The Masters of Creation of the Celestial Heavens, Carefree Village, and the Permitha Void had all suffered a huge loss. The 4 great heavenly teachers of the Celestial Heavens had been restrained by the mysterious heavenly masters of the other side, and all their schemes and formations had been broken by them. They even knew the character of their heavenly teachers like the back of their hands. No matter if it was fighting in front of the formation or ambushing the supplies to intercept the rations, they were no match for that person. On the other hand, Carefree Village and the Permitha Void had suffered far less from the celestial heavens in terms of military strength. Shang Pining had always laid out his formations in an upright and above-board manner. He had never gone astray and had always surrounded his enemies with the most superior military strength. As a result, Carefree Village and the Permitha Void had also lost quite a number of troops. On the other hand, Son of Heaven Yin had attacked the Great Void in Yudu, even attacking the Void Bridge. If it wasn't for little Earth Count Qin Fengqing fighting with all his might and the Qin family's disciples carrying the coffin over to risk their lives, they wouldn't have been able to take back the Great Void in Yudu. After that, because both sides had a long battle line, they could only harass them on a small scale. The land of the Great Void was too vast and there were plenty of endless territories. Constructing a god city and building an impregnable pass was an inevitable choice between both sides. On the other hand, in other areas that didn't have any city passes, it was where the gods and devils of both sides competed with the divine arts practitioners. There were often gods and devils of both sides wandering around, looking for opportunities to kill their enemies and make contributions. At this point, the focus of the two parties' fight became the Supreme Consciousness realm. Both sides were determined to obtain the Grand Emperor's corporeal body, and the corporeal bodies of the various chiefs and elders of the Masters of Creation. It was just that the Supreme Consciousness realm was incomparably terrifying. Anyone who entered it would be assimilated, turning from three-dimensional to a flat surface and then to a dot. At the center of the consciousness realm, even celestial venerables would be frozen in time and space. Thus, even though both sides were eyeing the Supreme Consciousness realm covetously, no one dared to step in. On this day, 100 huge flags fluttered and flew past the ground. They flew over the mountains, rivers, and lakes. Not far from the Supreme Consciousness realm, these 100 huge flags suddenly laid down on the ground and didn't move at all. They assimilated with the ground, and if one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to find these huge flags. In the sky, dozens of gods and devils of Carefree Village carried a coffin that had been coiled until it was shiny. The eyes of those dozens of gods and devils were like torches, and their gazes were like pillars of light. They shone down from the sky and surveyed the area before walking away. He brought them far away, and the ground floated. The 100 huge flags gradually appeared and flew forward again. Suddenly, huge flags stood up straight, and they swirled rapidly to transform into young women. The one that flew over just now should be a thief head of Carefree Village. His name is Feng Yuji, and he's the Crown Prince Junior protector of the traitor Qin Yi. The woman in the lead looked around and said calmly, "However, our goal here isn't him, but the Grand Emperor's corporeal body. There's no need to clash with him." She took out a mirror and shone it at the ground. After surveying the area, she suddenly saw the lake in front of her split open, and the water flowed to both sides. The entire lake became a huge eye. That huge eye rolled around, and its pupil shrunk as it landed on those women. The woman used a mirror to shine on the eye, and the huge eyeball rotated. Strange void runes appeared in the pupil, and the eye slowly rose into the sky, transforming into a huge creature that reached into the clouds. It shook the mountain of bones on its back forcefully. Void Beast. This Void Beast was the one that the ancestor spirit Luo Xiao had brought out from the ancestral court. Luo Xiao thought he had subdued the Void Beast, but he didn't expect it to be the Grand Emperor instead of him. Back then, Celestial Venerable Yun thought that the Void Beast was Luo Xiao's mount, so he brought it into the Great Void. That was how the Grand Emperor knew that the Masters of Creation were hiding here. The Void Beast's body merged into the void, making it hard to detect from afar. "Bring us to find the Grand Emperor," the woman said solemnly as she put away her mirror. The Void Beast's body became fainter as it walked towards the Supreme Consciousness realm. The 100 or so women were all dressed in grayish-green palace attire and quickly caught up to the Void Beast. One of the women looked at the Void Beast that had merged into the void and said in a low voice, "Xueran, we didn't inform the two celestial venerables when we entered this place. Is this a little rash?" Xuemachan said with a smile, "Do the two celestial venerables know? If we tell the two celestial venerables, won't we still be beaten to death by celestial concubine when we return? Celestial Empress ordered us to infiltrate this place and carry out our plans. We are the people around Celestial Empress, and we are usually taught cultivation by her. She treats us like her disciples, imparting divine arts, paths, skills, and so on. We will naturally work for her wholeheartedly." Their bodies gradually faded into the void and became women formed by cubes. It was very strange. Man Shui continued. The relationship between celestial venerables isn't harmonious, and they have their own ideas. If we tell the two celestial venerables, it will spoil Her Majesty's great plan. We will bring along the supreme treasure that Her Majesty forged, so we can only succeed and not fail. They followed the Void Beast to the second level of the Supreme Consciousness realm, and their bodies transformed from cubes to paper human figures without thickness. Not long later, they became flying lights again. Finally, they followed the Void Beast to the inner area of the Supreme Consciousness realm. They returned to their true forms and looked at the lotus-shaped landmass. Over there, majestic Masters of Creation floated in the air. Their white robes were elegant, but they were still in the air. Meanwhile, the Grand Emperor's corporeal body was the largest. This corporeal body was incomparably majestic, but it was penetrated by countless thick roots. It was fixed on the lotus landmass, unable to move. The 100 women each took out a small sack and opened it to take out a huge divine weapon. The divine weapons they took out were all different and they looked like components. These components were all forged from the divine metal of the ancestral court and gave off a simple luster. The runes imprinted on them were also extremely ancient. Just as these palace maids were about to put the divine weapons together, Shui Rong's expression suddenly changed. He said in a low voice, "Someone is coming." The women hurriedly took off their clothes and spread them out, transforming into huge flags that stuck to the ground, becoming one with the ground. The void beast also vanished into the void. Oh! The girls were bewildered, and they thought to themselves, the celestial venerables on both sides know that this place is dangerous, and very few people have set foot here. Why would anyone come here? Just as they were thinking about it, the void suddenly trembled violently, and an incomparably huge strange ship sailed over from the depths of the void. The void beast had just hidden in the void when it was hit by the huge ship. Its bones were broken, and its tendons snapped. Its 6 limbs grabbed onto the sides of the huge ship, and it was powerless to struggle. Boom! The huge ship crashed into the ground of the Supreme Consciousness Realm, and slid for hundreds of miles before coming to a stop. More than 200 eyes popped out from the ground, looking nervously at the huge ship that had suddenly appeared. It was the women under Heavenly Lady Chong. Their huge flags were extremely peculiar. They could merge with the ground, but with a thought they could separate from the ground. Their eyes were separated from the ground as if they were growing on the ground. This was one of Heavenly Lady Chong's ultimate arts. The huge ship was incomparably huge. It was even larger than the lotus landmass that had trapped the Grand Emperor's corporeal body. Even the Supreme Consciousness Realm couldn't assimilate the huge ship in an instant. The huge ship stabbed diagonally into the ground. What was even more shocking was that there was actually a huge landmass on the huge ship. Meanwhile, that void beast was extremely unlucky. It was crushed into 2 by this huge ship and died an unnatural death. The girls were worried. What kind of weapon is this? At that moment, he heard a loud and clear voice saying angrily, "Monk, I told you that it would be hard for you to determine the exact location, but you just had to guarantee that it would be fine. Great, now we don't know where we have run to. This place is perfect." Another voice rang out. It was very cultured and refined, like an old man who was well read. He said unhurriedly, "Farmer, don't always be so loud. The Heavenly King of War chose this place because he was worried that he would crush his comrades in the Great Void. After all, this is a battlefield." Another woman's voice rang out. "Can't we enter the Great Void and you do? The land there is vast and sparse. My addiction to alcohol is acting up again. Do you have alcohol? I want to chop someone up. Who knows what this place is? There's something strange. An indescribable force invaded my body and turned me into a piece of paper. You guys also became pieces of paper. This place is similar to the power of the living realm of the dead in our Fengdu. Moo. Everyone, don't be noisy, listen to me. This is the Supreme Consciousness Realm. I've been here before, and that's where the Grand Emperor is buried." The huge ship was filled with weird people, and the 100 palace maids were astonished. They closed their eyes and merged with the ground. Qin Mu stood on the Permitha Arc and explained the origin of the Supreme Consciousness Realm to everyone. "It was my idea to choose this place, Duke Ming. The Great Void and Yudu are also battlefields. If it were me, I would definitely concentrate my forces to attack Yudu, and it wouldn't be difficult for me to seize the Great Void. In order to avoid crushing my comrades there, I can't land in Yudu, so this is the only safe place to land. There's no need to worry about crushing the people here." Martial arts heavenly teacher Guan Cha pointed at the corpse of the void beast and sneered. "No life forms? What's with this big fellow? It suddenly appeared and got crushed by us." Qin Mu looked at the void beast's corpse under the ship and felt slightly awkward. He smiled and said, "This is a void beast, the Grand Emperor's mount. It was left here by the Grand Emperor to guard his corpse. Don't worry, there won't be anyone else here." Suddenly, King Yama pulled back his cloak and sniffed. "There's the smell of living people here. There are about 108. Qin Mu's face turned black. King Yama continued, "It's not the aura of a living person on the ship. There are indeed other people here. Diyue opened her divine eyes and looked around, but she didn't find anything. She shook her head and said, I don't see anyone else here. Mingdu Heavenly King Tianshu took out Imperial Gate divine knife, and the surface of the knife was incomparably bright, shining in all directions. If there's anyone, they will definitely be shown on by my knife light. He exclaimed softly and shook his head. Even my Imperial Gate divine knife can't shine. King Yama stretched out a finger and gently scratched the heart of his brows. An eye opened up and he said, This eye of mine was forged according to the great Tao of Yudu. It can see through the void and investigate the souls of people. All things with souls can't escape my detection. He looked around and shook his head. Even though I smell a living person, I can't see anyone here. Everyone probed around, but they didn't discover where those 108 people were hiding. Qin Mu's heart stirred slightly, and he opened the vertical eye in the heart of his brows. He looked around and said with a smile, Since there's no one around, let's leave this place first and meet up with Carefree Village. If Celestial Venerable Hua and Celestial Venerable Su detect us, we won't be able to stop them. We'll probably be completely wiped out. Wait a minute, since we're here, how can we not offer incense to the Grand Emperor? He took out a bunch of incense sticks, around 100 of them, and lit them up in the wind. With a wave of his hand, 100 incense sticks flew out and stabbed into the cliff of the Supreme Consciousness realm. As the incense sticks stabbed into the ground, fresh blood instantly flowed out. Large flags appeared from the ground, and corpses appeared under them. They were covered by the flags, and there was an incense stick stuck in each of the female corpses' heads. They were still burning faintly. On the Permitha Ark, everyone was astonished. They had also looked there earlier, but they didn't see anything. They didn't expect Qin Mu to have seen it. Qin Mu looked into the distance and said in a low voice, Looking at their attire, they should be from the celestial heavens chambers of concubines. Why are the palace maids here? I'll go take a look. Martial arts heavenly teacher Zhuocha flew out of the Permitha Arkansas unexpectedly. Just as he left the ark, his corporeal body started to transform. It was assimilated by the Supreme Consciousness realm and transformed into a thin paper man. Martial arts heavenly teacher clicked his tongue in wonder. He roused his cultivation and magic power, and with a loud bang, he actually transformed back into his original form from a paper man. He was in existence on Emperor's throne realm. Even though he was suppressed after coming here, his cultivation was too high. How strong was the body of the number 1 martial emperor in the world? Diyue also jumped off the ship and couldn't help exclaiming softly. She had also transformed into a paper man. However, her cultivation was incomparably dense, and as her magic power circulated, she immediately returned to normal. Saint Woodcutter also jumped off the ship and turned into a paper man with a pop. However, he couldn't break through the suppression and floated forward leisurely. Next, Qin Mu walked past him and strolled leisurely. His corporeal body didn't change at all. Qin Mu turned his head and gave him a radiant smile. Saint Woodcutter was furious and raised his paper axe to chop. However, when the paper axe landed on Qin Mu's body, it was bent and didn't have any power. Teacher's cultivation is so low. Qin Mu shook his head and walked forward. Saint Woodcutter followed him angrily, carrying the bent paper axe with a belly full of anger. Qin Mu didn't rely on his own magic power to break through the suppression of the Supreme Consciousness realm. It was because he understood the Supreme Consciousness realm too well, and could even execute it himself. Of course, his realm couldn't be compared to the Grand Emperor's, but the Grand Emperor's Supreme Consciousness realm also had a huge flaw, so he wasn't suppressed. However, Saint Woodcutter's cultivation was truly lacking. The few of them got closer to the broken cliff. Suddenly, the corpse of a palace made under the flag twitched, and Qin Mu's heart jumped. He executed his magic power and gave a low shout. However, he saw the incense stuck in the foreheads of the palace maids trembling slightly, freezing the corpses in place. Martial arts heavenly teacher quickly walked forward, and he saw the incense burning on the foreheads of the palace maids suddenly accelerating. In an instant the incense burned out and the ashes fell. Martial Path Great Emperor, there's a problem with the corpse.
Qin Mu hurriedly shouted.
Martial arts heavenly teacher Guan Cha had already come to the side of the corpses when the corpses under the flag suddenly stood up straight. Qin Mu hurriedly flew over. His incense wasn't just to stab the palace maids to death. It also had the effect of locking their corporeal bodies. This was the Supreme Consciousness realm, and it was filled with the Grand Emperor's consciousness. He was worried that the Grand Emperor's consciousness would take the chance to invade these corpses, so he used the incense to lock them. However, the incense suddenly burned clean. It was obvious that the Grand Emperor's consciousness had entered the corpses of the palace maids and parasitized them, breaking through Qin Mu's suppression with his terrifying consciousness. Martial arts heavenly teacher clenched his fist. Before this old farmer who looked like he was facing the yellow soil with his back facing the sky. His fist intent broke through the horizon and tore through the sky. Oh! He punched out, and the palace maids suddenly turned their heads to look at him. They cried out in unison, and ear-piercing cries rang out. Terrifying consciousness surged forth, transforming into a great overarching heaven. Martial arts heavenly teacher's fist smashed into the center of great overarching heaven. Pong, 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 a series of explosions rang out, and the heads of the palace maids exploded almost at the same time. The spirit of his fist was simply too strong. When he punched out, the Grand Emperor's consciousness was shattered, and the Grand Emperor's consciousness in the palace maids' bodies exploded. Martial arts heavenly teacher retracted his fist, and the headless palace maids suddenly leaped down the cliff. Martial arts heavenly teacher was stunned. He quickly came to the side of the cliff and saw those headless palace maids floating in the air, slowly floating towards the center of the lotus landmass. Diyue and the rest hurried over and stood at the top of the cliff to look down. Qin Mu also came here, but he saw huge divine weapon components floating out from the bags on the waists of the headless palace maids. They were slowly assembling themselves in the sky. Not good. Qin Mu's heart jumped and he hurriedly said, "The Grand Emperor is about to escape. Let us leave quickly," Diyue said with a smile. "The speed of those divine weapon components is so slow. As long as we take them away, he won't be able to escape." She took a step forward, and just as she left the cliff, she saw that the speed of the divine weapons had actually increased by dozens of times. She couldn't help but be astonished. Just as she took this step, martial arts heavenly teacher Guancha stretched his hand out to grab her back. He didn't expect Diyue's cultivation to be higher than his, so he grabbed nothing. Martial arts heavenly teacher hurriedly rushed forward. At this moment he also noticed a strange sight. In his eyes, Diyue's movements became extremely slow, and when he turned back to look at the cliff, he saw that the speed of the people on the cliff was unbelievably fast. He rushed towards Diyue, and her speed became more normal. Meanwhile, the speed of the people on the cliff became faster. Qin Mu took out the Grand Emperor's seal and the Grand Emperor's sacrificial altar. He flew towards them and pulled them onto the sacrificial altar. Only then did martial arts heavenly teacher and Diyue realize that everything around them had become normal. Qin Mu looked at the components of the divine weapons and saw that they were already clasped together. It's too late. Qin Mu controlled the sacrificial altar to fly up the cliff and said solemnly, "The Grand Emperor's reincarnation, Celestial Venerable Chang, is already in the Great Void. She must be nearby. If we don't leave now, we won't be able to protect the Paramitha Ark." Everyone quickly flew to the top of the cliff and rushed towards the Paramitha Ark, and Qin Mu turned back to take a look and saw the divine weapons clinking together to form a huge ball. All kinds of strange runes were imprinted on the sphere, and they revolved around the Supreme Consciousness realm at a steady pace. The runes lit up one after another and shone on the realm. Sakura started the Paramitha Ark and sailed outwards. The speed of the ark gradually increased, and Qin Mu looked into the Supreme Consciousness realm again. He saw the ball rolling and circling around the Grand Emperor's incomparably huge body, but its trajectory never repeated. As the ball rolled, more runes were projected into the realm. After so many years, the Grand Emperor finally broke through Celestial Venerable Ling and Celestial Venerable Yun's formation. It's rare. Just as he thought until here, his expression suddenly changed and he shouted, "Paramitha Ark, enter the void." Sakura Yuran utilized the Paramitha Ark with all her might, and the huge ship sailed into the void. At this moment, the Supreme Consciousness realm that shrouded the Grand Emperor's corporeal body on the Lotus landmass started to spin furiously. The Masters of Creation chiefs and elders, who were also fixed in the domain, aged at a speed visible to the naked eye. The wounds on the Grand Emperor's body began to heal themselves. Boom! Qin Mu saw the Grand Emperor raise his palm and open his fingers to grab the Paramitha Arkansa. At the same time, the Paramitha Ark entered the void and vanished from this world. The next moment, the void shattered, and everyone on the ship and Fengdu turned back to look. They saw the 5 fingers of that ancient hand opening up, and it was even larger than the Paramitha Ark. Between his 5 fingers, there was actually cloud chi and lightning. The fingerprints on his fingers were like ravines, and the closer he got, the deeper the ravines became. They were like abysses. The Grand Emperor was indeed the strongest corporeal body in history. Of course, in Qin Mu's heart, Celestial Emperor Taichu's corporeal body was the strongest corporeal body. The huge hand was extremely fast, and it was about to grab the Paramitha Arkansa martial arts heavenly teacher Wuxia roared angrily, and his hair flew into the sky. His fists flew up from the ship and rushed towards the Grand Emperor's huge hand. Due Tianshu, King Yama, Fisherman, Green Emperor, Sakura Buddha, and the rest of the strong practitioners rushed towards the huge hand. Saint Woodcutter took down his axe and was about to rush forward when he was pulled back by Qin Mu. "Teacher, don't join in the fun." Qin Mu said helplessly, "Your cultivation is too low, go take a look at how the pill furnace is burning, and see if it has enough firepower. If it's not enough, add some medicinal stones." Saint Woodcutter laughed from extreme anger. Suddenly, incomparably terrifying fluctuations came over. Martial arts heavenly teacher was covered in blood as he flew back. Even the strongest martial path Great Emperor's divine art could barely move the finger of that huge hand. Dua hurried over and swept up martial arts heavenly teacher to bring him back. Dua's sleeves fluttered, and her divine arts reached perfection. No matter if it was the divine arts of the 4 deities of the 4 poles or the paths, skills, and divine arts of the other ancient gods, they were all at her fingertips. Even the great Tao divine arts of Yu to Earth Count couldn't stump her. Her talents were extraordinary, and she even comprehended different emperors' throne techniques. It wasn't just learning them. She was an existence that was second only to founding Emperor Qin Yi during the founding emperor era. An existence that could compete with Qin Yi for the position of founding emperor. However, she had died 20,000 years ago after all. She had been assassinated by Son of Heaven Yin. Even though Qin Mu had revived her, he had still wasted 20,000 years. Her divine art met that huge hand, and 2 terrifying forces collided. The surging consciousness of that huge hand invaded her divine art and destroyed it. Dua's expression changed drastically, and martial arts heavenly teacher Guancha immediately stood in front of her to block her. She broke all techniques with her strength and punched into great overarching heavenly consciousness. Sakura, Qinghuang, Tianshu, King Yama, and the rest hurried over, and they saw the palm transforming into a fist. The huge fist met martial arts heavenly teacher's fist, one big and one small, bursting forth with incomparably terrifying power. Farmer vomited blood and fell back again. The Buddha rays around Sakura burned furiously, and the battle techniques of the Buddha path burst forth. King Yama opened his cape, and the void turned dark. A divine sword stabbed out from the darkness, and Green Emperor's body shook. He transformed into a green dragon that was incomparably huge. His body was like a continuous mountain range. Tianshu gritted his teeth and his mouth was dry. He wanted to drink, but he had no wine to drink, so he could only brace himself and raise the Imperial Gate divine knife. At the same time, the Paramitha Ark carried Fengdu into the void at an even faster speed. However, the next moment terrifying waves came over and Tianshu, King Yama, Green Emperor, and the rest flew back and crashed into Fengdu on the ship. Even after sliding for several hundred miles, they still couldn't stop their momentum. Only martial arts heavenly teacher and Due were still resisting the attack of that huge hand. The Grand Emperor's arm seemed to be able to extend infinitely far. His palm was either a fist, a hook, a palm, or a madra. It could chop, slice, or flick, making martial arts heavenly teacher and Due exhausted. Suddenly, martial arts heavenly teacher Guancha vomited blood again and was sent flying back. He crashed into the ship and bounced up again. He tumbled and rolled for an unknown distance before stopping. Nyo Sanduo hurriedly ran forward and was about to check if his master was dead or alive when he saw Farmer gritting his teeth and jumping onto his back. He shouted, Sanduo, fight him to the death. Old master, stand properly. A long moo came from Nyo Sandwa's mouth, and his body expanded crazily. He suddenly stood up and transformed into a bull-headed human martial path devil king, with a body full of lumps and muscles. The lumps of muscles made the green dragon scales stand up. The old bull's chi and blood boiled, and they burst forth from his body. His chi and blood were like blood dragons coiling around his body, while Farmer split his legs and stood on two sharp bull horns. With a roar, his clothes were torn apart, and his muscles were like huge dragons swimming under his skin. He still had the appearance of an old farmer just now, but now he seemed to have become dozens of years younger. He went from an old man to a strong man and then to a young man. He had muscles all over his body, and his chi and blood were like a rainbow. He was the same person who had fought hard with founding emperor back then and fought with his life on the line. The reason why he became an old farmer was because his heart was old. Ever since founding emperor abandoned the people of the primordial realm and chose not to fight, avoiding carefree village, Guancha had become old, becoming an old farmer who only knew how to farm and beat up Wentienga. And now, facing the Grand Emperor's hand, his blood boiled again. Nyo Sanduo took a step forward, and lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. He rushed to the edge of the Permitha arc in a few steps and leaped, heading straight for the Grand Emperor's hand. Dua flew over and was sent flying back. Shuacha's 5 fingers opened up and gently pushed against the back of her heart to dissolve the power of the Grand Emperor. She said solemnly, "Those on the numinous sky realm and Emperor's throne realm, the one who fishes, the who chops wood, go back." Heavenly teacher fisherman Han Tang put away his fishing rod and pulled Saint Woodcutter. Saint Woodcutter's face was red as he raised his huge axe and said, "I can fight." Sakura, Green Emperor Tianshu, and the rest rushed forward once again. Everyone's will was united as they stood in front of that huge hand. All kinds of killer moves emerged endlessly, but they were still forced to retreat continuously. At that moment in the void, a huge head slowly rose and pierced into the void, revealing the Grand Emperor's incomparably huge face. It was even larger than that palm. His eyes slowly opened, and they were incomparably bright, as if there were 2 suns blazing in his eyes. The heart of his brows split open, revealing a deep hole. It was originally the Grand Primordium Origin Stone, but it had been shattered by Divine King Gong Yun. Saint Woodcutter, who was standing on the ship, hurriedly looked down. He saw that in the Lotus landmass, the trapped Grand Emperor's corporeal body was still trying to break free. In his incomparably thick thighs, roots pierced into the Lotus landmass and connected with the Great Void, making it hard for him to break free. The Grand Emperor raised his other hand and reached into the void. Everyone couldn't help feeling despair. At this moment, Qin Mu leaped up, and Saint Woodcutter hurriedly stretched his hand out to grab him. However, he was still a step too late. Due and the rest raised their heads and looked at the face that was countless times taller than them. They felt a deep sense of powerlessness. However, at this moment, a tiny figure flew past them with a peachwood hairpin in her hand. The hairpin flashed as she attacked the Grand Emperor with her finger and painting. "Brother Mu!" Due panicked and chased after Qin Mu. Suddenly, the Grand Emperor raised his palm and shouted, "Stop!" Qin Mu stopped and continued to hold the hairpin. Due also caught up to him and blocked in front of him. The Grand Emperor's gaze landed on the hairpin in Qin Mu's hand, and his voice was slightly hoarse. "You learned it." Qin Mu nodded and smiled. "I've learned it. In that case, I'll give you face." The Grand Emperor's huge face revealed a smile, and he chuckled. "We aren't mortal enemies, so there's no need for us to fight to the death. If I don't provoke you, don't provoke me. Let's mind our own business." Celestial Venerable Mu. "What do you think?" Qin Mu said with a smile. "That's what I was thinking as well. The escape of His Majesty the Grand Emperor is a joyous event. If the 10 Celestial Venerables knew about it, they would definitely be overjoyed and shed tears of joy. In that case, why didn't the Grand Emperor leave the Great Void to play in the colorful world outside?" Guancha, Sakura, Green Emperor, and the rest hurried over and stood in front of Qin Mu, protecting him in the center. The Grand Emperor's expression darkened, and he sneered. "Celestial Venerable Mu, are you threatening me? The masters of creation must be exterminated. I can avoid provoking you, But the masters of creation in the great void must die. I've already taken a step back, so don't push your luck. You know that I've already broken the reverse supreme consciousness realm. I'm not afraid of you.
Chinmu laughed.
Of course you aren't afraid of me, but I'm not afraid of you either. I don't have the ability to deal with other celestial venerables, but when I deal with you, I can pull you into the unchanging divine art and make you live with me endlessly. Celestial Venerable Chong, as long as you don't touch the great void, I'll let you leave. If you do, we'll follow the oath we made when we became sworn brothers, but we'll die on the same day, month, and year. The Grand Emperor's expression became even darker. You don't have Celestial Venerable Ling's power, so you can't drag me down with you. You're just... He suddenly shut his mouth. Qin Mu executed Celestial Venerable Ling's peachwood hairpin, and he felt a great terror surging into his heart. All right, you and I are sworn brothers, and I'm the elder brother. In that case, I'll take a step back and leave the great void. The Grand Emperor's body sank down and vanished from the void.